The bridal shop's bell chimed as I pushed open the door, the sound as bitter as the taste in my mouth. Through the forest of white, tall, and silk dresses, I spotted my sister Victoria twirling in front of a three-way mirror, our mother dabbing tears from her eyes. "Oh, Victoria," Mom gushed, "you look absolutely perfect. The wedding dress probably cost more than most people's monthly salary." Of course it did. She paid for it with my money. "Rebecca." Victoria's face lit up with fake enthusiasm when she saw me in the mirror. "I was wondering when you show up. What do you think? Worth every penny, right? My name is Rebecca Anderson, and 2 weeks ago, I discovered my sister had drained my savings account of $78,000 to fund her dream wedding. The money I'd spent years saving for my own future, gone in a series of unauthorized transfers while I was on a business trip. How could you, Victoria?" I kept my voice low, conscious of the other customers browsing nearby. "That was my entire savings." She turned to face me, all innocence and confusion. "Oh, come on, Rebecca, don't be so dramatic. I'll pay you back eventually." She smoothed down the intricate beadwork on her bodice. "Besides, you know how important this wedding is to me, to all of us. Important enough to steal from your own sister." "Steal is such an ugly word," Victoria sighed, examining her reflection again. "I prefer to think of it as borrowing. You'd have said no if I'd asked, and Matthew and I need this wedding to be perfect. You know how his family is." "Ah yes, Matthew Harrison, Victoria's fiancé and heir to the Harrison fortune. Old money, old names, old expectations. The kind of family that would look down their noses at our decidedly middle-class background if the wedding wasn't appropriately lavish." "Mom," I turned to our mother, who was suddenly very interested in a rack of veils. "Are you seriously okay with this?" "Well," she hesitated, not meeting my eyes. "Victoria did say she'll pay you back, and this wedding is such a wonderful opportunity for her, for all of us, really. The Harrison family has so many connections." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but then again, maybe I could. Victoria had always been the favorite, the pretty one, the social butterfly who could charm her way out of any situation. I was the responsible one, the steady one, the one who worked hard and saved carefully while Victoria flitted from one expensive whim to another. "You're going to the police, aren't you?" Victoria's voice had lost its sweetness, turning sharp. "That's why you're here, to threaten me?" I met her gaze in the mirror. "How did you even get access to my account?" She shrugged, the beads on her dress catching the light. "You really should change your passwords more often, Rebecca. Using Mom's birthday for everything isn't exactly secure." The casual way she admitted to it made my blood boil. But before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text. Looking down at the screen, I felt my anger give way to something else. Determination. "No, Victoria," I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. "I'm not going to the police. Not yet, anyway." She raised an eyebrow, suspicious of my sudden calm. "Then why are you here?" "To let you know that I know, and to give you a chance to make this right." Victoria laughed, with sound like tinkling glass. "Or what? You'll tell Matthew?" "Please, he wouldn't believe you over me. Nobody ever does." She was right about that. Victoria had always been the better liar, the better manipulator. But what she didn't know was that I had something she didn't. Proof. Not just of her theft, but of something far more damaging. The text I'd just received was from Daniel, a private investigator I'd hired after discovering the theft. "Got what you needed. Meeting at 2 p.m. to review findings." "You have until the wedding to return my money," I said, turning to leave. "Every cent of it." "Or what?" Victoria called after me, her voice mocking. "What are you going to do, Rebecca?" I paused at the door, looking back at her, resplendent in her stolen dress. "You'll find out." Outside, the autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves. I checked my watch, just enough time to make it to Daniel's office. As I drove across town, I thought about how things had come to this. Victoria and I had never been close, despite our mother's best efforts. 3 years apart in age, we were opposites in every way that mattered. While I worked part-time jobs through college and built my career in marketing, Victoria bounced between expensive schools and failed business ventures, always supported by our parents' indulgence. Meeting Matthew Harrison had been her golden ticket. He was everything she'd always wanted, rich, connected, and completely taken in by her carefully crafted persona. Their whirlwind romance had culminated in a proposal after just 6 months, and suddenly Victoria was planning the society wedding of the century. Daniel's office was in a modest building downtown, the kind of place that didn't draw attention, perfect for someone in his line of work. He was waiting for me when I arrived, a thick folder on his desk. "Miss Anderson," he greeted me, gesturing to a chair. "I think you'll find this interesting." He opened the folder, spreading out photographs and documents. "Your sister's fiancé isn't quite what he seems." I leaned forward, examining the evidence. Matthew Harrison, it turned out, had secrets of his own, secrets that would destroy not just the wedding but Victoria's entire carefully constructed future. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, picking up a particularly damning photograph. Daniel nodded grimly, every bit of it verified. "The question is, what do you want to do with it?" I sat back, thinking about Victoria in her stolen wedding dress, so confident in her immunity from consequences. First, I want copies of everything. And then for the next hour, Daniel and I mapped out a plan. It wasn't just about getting my money back anymore. It was about teaching Victoria a lesson she'd never forget. That evening, my phone lit up with texts from our mother, begging me to be reasonable and think about the family. I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on organizing the information Daniel had provided, building a case that would shatter Victoria's perfect wedding plans. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Victoria. "Dear Rebecca, I know you're upset, but you're being childish about this. The money is spent, deposits paid, contracts signed. There's no going back now. Besides, once I'm married to Matthew, I'll have more than enough to pay you back. Just be patient and don't ruin this for everyone. Love, Victoria." Her arrogance was breathtaking. She really believed she could steal my life savings and face no consequences. That's what a lifetime of indulgence had taught her, that rules didn't apply to her, that she could take whatever she wanted. I opened my laptop and began composing a response. "Dear Victoria, you're right, the money is spent. But before you get too comfortable with that thought, you might want to ask Matthew about his monthly trips to Vegas and about Sophie. Love, Rebecca." I didn't send it, not yet. But soon, very soon, Victoria would learn that her perfect life wasn't as secure as she thought. Over the next few days, I watched as wedding preparations continued at a frenzied pace. Victoria had spared no expense, my expense, in creating her dream event. The venue was a historic mansion outside the city. The guest list included local celebrities and politicians, and every detail was meticulously planned to impress Matthew's family. I received an invitation in the mail, cream-colored paper with gold embossing. The irony wasn't lost on me, being invited to a wedding paid for with my stolen money. "Are you going to RSVP?" Mom asked when she called to check on me. "Victoria really wants you there." "Oh, I'll be there," I assured her. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The week before the wedding, I met with Daniel again. He had more information, bank records, text messages, surveillance photos. Matthew Harrison wasn't just cheating on Victoria. He was involved in something much darker. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Daniel asked as I reviewed the new evidence. "Once you start, there's no going back." I thought about Victoria's smug face in the bridal shop, about years of watching her take and take while I worked and saved, about her complete lack of remorse over stealing my future. "Unsure," I said firmly. "She needs to learn that actions have consequences." The morning of Victoria's wedding dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a perfect day. I dressed carefully in the pale blue bridesmaid's dress she'd chosen, doing my hair and makeup with precise attention to detail. Everything needed to appear normal until the right moment. The historic Harrison estate was transformed into a fairy tale setting. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers hanging from the garden tent, champagne flowing freely. The cost of the flowers alone probably equaled 3 months of my salary. "Rebecca," Victoria's voice rang out as I entered the bridal suite. She was already in her dress, surrounded by bridesmaids and makeup artists. "I was worried you wouldn't show. And miss my sister's big day?" I smiled, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Never." For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered across her face. My email about Sophie must have rattled her, though she'd never responded to it. But then her perfect bride mask slipped back into place. "Well, good," she said, turning back to her reflection. "Everything needs to be perfect today. Matthew's entire family is here, and they're already..." "Already what?" She sighed, adjusting her veil. Let's just say they have certain expectations. This wedding needs to go exactly as planned. I thought about the manila envelope in my car, about the text messages I'd scheduled to send at precise intervals throughout the day. Don't worry, Victoria. Everything will go exactly as it should. The ceremony was scheduled for 4:00 p.m. at 2:30. While Victoria was having final photos taken with our parents, I sent the first text to Matthew. Just 3 words. I know about Sufi. I watched from across the garden as he read it, his face paling slightly before he quickly composed himself. He glanced around, trying to spot the sender, but I was already walking away. At 3:15 during the pre-ceremony cocktail hour, I had Daniel deliver an envelope to Matthew's room. Inside were photos, not all of them, just enough to let him know we had proof. Problems? I asked innocently, finding Victoria alone for a moment in the bridal suite. She was pacing, her perfect dress swishing across the floor. Matthew's acting strange, she said, biting her perfectly painted lip. He keeps checking his phone and disappearing. You haven't said anything to him, have you? I adjusted a flower in my bouquet. About what? About the money you stole from me or about Sophie? She froze. Rebecca, please don't do this. Not today. I promise I'll pay you back. Like you promised to pay back Mom and Dad for your failed boutique? Or Thomas for the startup money you borrowed last year? I stepped closer. You're not the only one who can uncover secrets, Victoria. Her face hardened. You wouldn't dare ruin this. The Harrison family would destroy you. Maybe. But they'd destroy Matthew first, and you by association. Before she could respond, our mother burst in. Victoria, honey, it's almost time. I left them there, making my way to the ceremony site. Guests were being seated, the string quartet was playing, and Matthew stood at the altar, looking increasingly uncomfortable. At 3:55, 5 minutes before the ceremony was due to start, I sent him the final text, a video this time, short but devastating. His face went from pale to ashen as he watched it. Ladies and gentlemen, the wedding planner's voice rang out. Please take your seats. The ceremony is about to begin. The music swelled, the guests stood, and the doors opened for Victoria's grand entrance. She looked radiant, our father beaming beside her as they started down the aisle. They made it halfway before Matthew stepped down from the altar. I can't, he said, his voice carrying in a sudden silence. I can't do this. Victoria stopped, her smile frozen. Matthew, what are you? I know you know, he said, looking directly at her, about Sophie, about everything. Who told you? He demanded. Was it Thompson? The confusion on Victoria's face was genuine. Matthew, what are you talking about? Who's Sophie? And then, as if on cue, a woman stood up from among the guests. I am. The next few minutes were chaos. Sophie, it turned out, wasn't just Matthew's mistress, she was his wife. Their marriage in Vegas 3 months ago had been very real, very legal, and very much a problem for the Harrison family. Victoria's perfect day imploded spectacularly. There were shouts, tears, accusations. Matthew's father had to be restrained from attacking his son. Guests fled in embarrassment or stayed to gawk at the unfolding drama. Through it all, I stood quietly in my bridesmaid's dress, watching my sister's carefully constructed world crumble. You, she said finally, spotting me through her tears. You did this. No, Victoria. You did this. Every choice you made, every person you stole from, every lie you told, it all led to this moment. She lunged at me then, all pretense of sophistication gone. I'll kill you. You've ruined everything. Our father caught her, holding her back as she screamed and thrashed. Her perfect dress was torn, her makeup streaked with tears. Miss Anderson, Daniel appeared at my elbow. Perhaps now would be a good time to discuss the financial matters. Victoria went still. What financial matters? The theft of my savings, for starters, I said calmly. The unauthorized access to my accounts, the fraudulent transfers. The police are very interested in all of it. You wouldn't, she whispered. Your own sister? You stopped being my sister the moment you decided to steal my future. I turned to Daniel. Show them. He opened his briefcase, pulling out documents, bank records, transfer receipts, screenshots of Victoria accessing my accounts. Our parents' faces fell as they realized the extent of her deception. Oh, Victoria, our mother whispered. What have you done? The aftermath was both swift and severe. The Harrison family, already reeling from Matthew's scandal, wanted nothing to do with any of it. They whisked him away to deal with the Sophie situation privately. Victoria faced criminal charges for theft and fraud. Our parents, finally forced to see her for who she really was, refused to bail her out this time. The wedding vendors, unpaid and angry, began legal proceedings of their own. Was it worth it? I asked her later, visiting her at our parents' house where she'd been forced to move back in. Was one perfect day worth losing everything? She didn't answer, just stared out the window, her perfect world shattered beyond repair. My money was eventually returned, not all at once but through a court-ordered repayment plan that would take Victoria years to fulfill. The wedding vendors claimed everything else, selling off the unused decorations and Victoria's dream dress to recoup their losses. A year later, I sat in my new apartment, paid for with the savings I'd rebuilt. A wedding invitation lay on my coffee table, not Victoria's this time, but mine own. My fiancé, unlike Matthew, was honest, hardworking, and completely real. Victoria wasn't invited. She was still working through her legal issues, still living with our parents, still blaming me for ruining her life. She never understood that she'd done that herself, one selfish choice at a time. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Had started handling my corporate security after the wedding debacle. Thought you'd want to know. Matthew Harrison just got divorced from both wives. I smiled, thinking about karma and consequences. Victoria had wanted the perfect wedding at any cost. Instead, she learned a valuable lesson about the price of perfection. As I began planning my own wedding, modest, meaningful, and paid for honestly, I thought about what real love and family should look like. Not a fairy tale built on lies and theft, but something true and strong and real. Victoria had chosen her path, and now she was living with the consequences. Me, I was finally living my own life on my own terms, with my own honestly earned money, and that was worth more than any perfect wedding day could ever be.
I stared at my phone, watching the screen fade to black before lighting up again with another incoming call from my mother. 3 calls in 5 minutes, a new record, even for her. The diamond on my engagement ring caught the afternoon light as I gripped the phone tighter, knowing exactly why she was calling. "Katie, darling, wonderful news." Her voice burst through the speaker before I could even say hello. "Lauren just made senior account manager at her firm. We simply must celebrate this weekend." My stomach dropped. "Mum, this weekend is my engagement party. We've been planning it for months." "Oh, that." The dismissal in her tone made my jaw clench. "Well, surely we can reschedule. This is such an important milestone for your sister. The managing partner specifically requested her promotion be announced at a formal gathering." I pressed my fingertips against my temple, counting backward from 10 like Marcus taught me. The invitations went out weeks ago. People have made travel arrangements. I've already started calling guests to inform them of the change. Most have been very understanding. The room tilted sideways. "You what?" "Katie, don't be difficult. Your sister has worked incredibly hard for this opportunity. The least you could do is show some support. The engagement party can wait. It's not as if Marcus is going anywhere." My free hand curled into a fist, nails digging into my palm. Did Lauren know about this when she called last week to confirm she'd be at my party? The slight pause told me everything. "That's hardly relevant now, dear. Actually, it's extremely relevant." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You and Lauren planned this, didn't you? Just like the time my college graduation dinner suddenly became her scholarship celebration. Or when my 30th birthday party transformed into her housewarming. Now you're being paranoid. This is exactly why we worry about you, always turning everything into a competition with your sister." I caught my reflection in the window, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with unshed tears. But something else was there too, something I hadn't seen in my own face before. Determination, maybe, or rage. "The party is happening as planned," I said. "If you and Lauren choose not to attend, that's your decision. Katie Elizabeth Morrison, you will not embarrass this family by—" "I have to go, Mum. I'm meeting Marcus for dinner." I ended the call and immediately switched off my phone, knowing the barrage of texts and calls would start within seconds. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys and purse. I needed to see Marcus, needed his steady presence to keep me from doing something rash. But with each step toward my car, a new memory surfaced, Lauren announcing her engagement at my law school graduation party. Mom scheduling Lauren's wedding shower the same weekend as my first major trial. Knowing I couldn't attend both. Dad always taking their side, his silence as crushing as their actions. 20 years of being pushed aside, minimized, made to feel less than. 20 years of swallowing my anger, of being the bigger person, of understanding and forgiving and trying to keep the peace. My phone stayed off as I drove to Marcus's office, but I could imagine the family group chat exploding. Aunt Clara would be the voice of reason, trying to mediate. Olivia would be firmly in my corner, probably unleashing the sharp tongue she'd inherited from Clara. Dad would say nothing, as usual, but for the first time, I didn't care about any of it. Something had snapped inside me, something that had been bending and stretching for far too long. As I pulled into the parking lot, I realized I was smiling. Not the practiced, peaceful smile I usually wore at family gatherings, but something darker, something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. They wanted a competition. Fine. But this time, I wasn't playing by their rules. Marcus's office was empty when I arrived, but I found him in the building's courtyard, pacing with his phone pressed to his ear. His tie hung loose around his neck, and his usually neat hair was mussed from running his fingers through it. Telltale signs he'd been dealing with my family. Helen, with all due respect. He stopped when he saw me, relief washing over his face. Katie's here now. We'll discuss this later. He ended the call and pulled me into a tight embrace. Your mother has called me 6 times in the last hour. She's trying to cancel our engagement party for Lauren's work thing. The words came out muffled against his chest. I know. She informed me it was my duty as a future son-in-law to convince you to be reasonable. His attempt at mimicking my mother's voice made me laugh despite everything. I told her the only duty I have is to support my fiancé. A text notification buzzed, then another, and another. Lauren's joined the campaign, I said, pulling away to check my phone. The messages rolled in like artillery fire. Lauren, you're being ridiculous. This promotion is huge for me. Lauren, Mum's right, you can reschedule. It's just a party. Lauren, why do you always have to make everything so difficult? Look at this. I showed Marcus the screen. She knew about this last week when she RSVP'd. She looked me in the eye at Sunday dinner and said she couldn't wait for the party. Marcus's jaw tightened. What do you want to do? My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again. I want them to feel what it's like, just once, to have something important to them completely dismissed. He studied my face carefully. Katie, whatever you decide, I'm with you. But make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. The right reasons? I laughed, but it came out harsh. Like the reasons they had for turning my law school graduation party into Lauren's engagement announcement, or when Mom scheduled Lauren's wedding shower the same weekend as my first major trial. I remember. His voice was gentle. I also remember you telling me you never wanted to be like them. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Aunt Clara's name flashed on the screen. Katie, honey. Her warm voice was like a balm. I just got off the phone with your mother. Are you okay? I'm fine. The lie came automatically. Just tired of it all. I bet you are, she paused. You know, your mother pulled something similar when I got engaged. Suddenly announced she was pregnant with you at my engagement dinner. Stole the spotlight completely. I straightened. She what? Oh yes. It was her way of making sure all eyes were on her. Just like she's doing now with Lauren. Clara's tone sharpened. History repeats itself when we let it, sweetheart. The pieces clicked into place. Every ruined celebration, every stolen moment. It wasn't just about Lauren, it was about control. What did you do? I asked. I went ahead with my plans. Had a beautiful engagement party with people who actually cared about celebrating my happiness. She chuckled. Your mother didn't speak to me for months. Best months of my life, actually. Marcus watched me as I processed this. He could probably see the wheels turning in my head. Thanks, Aunt Clara. I ended the call and turned to Marcus. I need your help with something. Name it. We're going to have our party, but first I need to make some calls. I pulled up my contact list. Starting with Lauren's boss. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Her boss? Remember Jack from law school? He's a partner at Lauren's firm now. We had drinks last month and he mentioned some concerns about her taking credit for other people's work. A smile spread across my face. I think it's time for a long overdue catch-up. Katie, Marcus's tone held a warning. I'm not doing anything wrong, just sharing some relevant information with interested parties. I met his gaze steadily. They wanted to make this about Lauren's career. Fine, let's talk about Lauren's career. He was quiet for a long moment before nodding slowly. Okay, but we do this smart. No direct attacks. Of course not. I leaned up and kissed him. We'll just let karma do its job, with a little help from the truth. As we walked to his car, my phone buzzed with another message from Lauren. I deleted it without reading it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't interested in playing defense anymore. It was time to change the game entirely. The coffee shop near Lauren's office wasn't my usual scene, but it offered the perfect vantage point. I stirred my untouched latte, watching the entrance while pretending to work on my laptop. Marcus thought I was at the office. Some lies I'd learned were necessary acts of self-preservation. Right on schedule, Lauren burst through the door, my mother close behind. They grabbed their drinks and settled at a corner table, heads bent together like conspirators, which of course they were. I slipped my earbuds in, opened my phone's recording app, and moved to the table behind them, angling my laptop screen as a shield. Katie's being completely unreasonable, Lauren was saying. I had this promotion planned for months. The timing just worked out perfectly. My mother's laugh was familiar, that soft, satisfied sound that always preceded her worst manipulations. Darling, you don't need to explain. We've always understood each other, haven't we? Just like with your engagement announcement at her graduation party. That was brilliant, wasn't it? The way you suggested I wait until then, when everyone important would be there. My hands started shaking. I pressed them flat against the table. Of course. Why waste money on two separate events? And it worked out beautifully. Your father's colleagues were all there, which helped Charles get that partnership interview. Mum's voice dropped lower. Though I still think you could have done better than Charles. Mother, Lauren's tone sharpened. We're not discussing my divorce right now. Focus on the current problem. Katie's actually fighting back this time. She called Jack yesterday. Your boss? What could she possibly... She knows, Mom. About the Anderson account. About how I took credit for Sarah's work. The silence that followed felt like a living thing. Well, Mom finally said, that's easily handled. You simply need to... No. Lauren's voice cracked. You don't understand. Katie has proof, emails, documentation. She's not just making noise this time. I reached for my phone, ready to send the recording to Jack, when a shadow fell across my table. I looked up to find my father standing there, his face ashen. Katie. His voice was barely a whisper. Mom and Lauren's heads whipped around. The look of horror on Lauren's face would have been satisfying if I wasn't so focused on maintaining my composure. Hello, everyone. I stood slowly, removing my earbuds. Fascinating conversation, really illuminating. You were spying on us? Lauren's outrage would have been more convincing if her voice wasn't trembling. Spying implies secrecy. I'm sitting in a public place having coffee. I smiled, channeling Mum's own weapon of choice. But you'd know all about secrets, wouldn't you, Lauren? Like the real reason the Anderson account exceeded projections. Katie. Dad stepped forward, reaching for my arm. Please, let's not... I jerked away from him. Don't. You don't get to play peacemaker now. Where were you all those times they sabotaged my achievements? All those times they turned my moments into Lauren's spotlight? I was protecting you, he said quietly. The words hit me like a physical blow. Protecting me? From what? Success? Happiness? From your mother's disappointment. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something there I'd never noticed before. Guilt, from becoming her next target. Mom stood so quickly her chair toppled backward. "Frank, that's enough." "No, Helen, it's not." His voice strengthened. "I watched you do to Katie what your mother did to you. I told myself it was better to let you focus on Lauren, that at least Katie would be spared the worst of it. I was wrong." The coffee shop had gone silent, other patrons pretending not to watch the drama unfolding. "I have proof of everything," I said, looking directly at Lauren. "Every manipulated situation, every stolen credit, every lie. I was going to send it all to Jack today." I paused, letting the threat sink in. "But maybe we can make a deal instead." "What kind of deal?" Lauren's voice was small. I pulled out my phone, held it up so they could see the recording app running. "You're going to tell Mom exactly why you're getting divorced. The real reason. And Mom..." I turned to her, feeling a cold satisfaction at her pale face. "You're going to sit there and listen. For once in your life, you're going to hear the truth about your perfect daughter." Lauren's sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit my mark. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destruction. It's about forcing people to face their own reflections. "And if we refuse?" Mum's voice was ice. I smiled, thinking of Jack's business card in my wallet. Then I start making calls. The truth about Lauren's divorce spread through our family like wildfire. I hadn't expected her to actually confess, but there she sat in that coffee shop, tears streaming down her face as she told Mom about Charles's gambling addiction and how she'd stolen from her own company to cover his debts. Now, 3 days later, I stood in Aunt Clara's kitchen, watching her hands shake as she poured tea. "Your mother's not answering my calls," Clara said, sliding a cup toward me. "Frank says she hasn't left their bedroom since Lauren's confession. And Lauren called in sick to work, again." Clara's mouth tightened. "Though, after what you discovered about the Anderson account, she might not have a job to go back to." The victory felt hollow. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, remembering Lauren's face when she finally broke down. "I wanted them to hurt like I hurt, but this..." "Be careful what you wish for," Clara murmured, just as the doorbell rang. We both froze at the sound of Olivia's voice in the hallway, and Helen's answering tone. "They're in the kitchen," Olivia called out, appearing in the doorway with my mother right behind her. Helen looked smaller somehow, her designer outfit wrinkled, her makeup slightly smeared. "Katie." Her voice cracked on my name. "We need to talk." Clara stood. "I'll give you some privacy." "No." Helen's hand shot out, grabbing Clara's arm. "You should hear this too. You were right, all those years ago." Olivia slipped into the seat beside me as Helen sank into a chair, her perfectly manicured hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "I received a call from Lauren's firm this morning," she said. "They're conducting a full audit. They found irregularities, going back years." The tea turned bitter in my mouth. "How much?" "Nearly $500,000. Helen's laugh was brittle. "My perfect daughter, embezzling to cover her husband's gambling debts, and now..." She looked directly at me for the first time. "Now she's trying to blame it all on Sarah, the colleague whose work she stole." My stomach dropped. "What?" "She told the board you fabricated evidence against her out of jealousy. That you and Sarah conspired to frame her." Helen's hands trembled as she reached for her purse, withdrawing a folded paper. She had this delivered to every board member this morning. I scanned the document, my vision blurring at the sight of my old law firm letterhead. The letter detailed a history of my supposed mental instability, my pathological jealousy of Lauren, complete with fabricated incidents and witness statements. "It has your signature," Helen said quietly. "A very good forgery." The room tilted. Olivia grabbed my arm, steadying me. "I didn't..." I swallowed hard. "You know I didn't." "I know." Helen's voice broke. "I know because I taught her how to forge signatures, just like my mother taught me." Clara inhaled sharply. "Helen..." "It was how I survived in my family," Helen continued as if she hadn't heard. "Always having something to hold over others. Always being one step ahead." She looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. I taught Lauren too well, and now she's going to destroy you to save herself. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Call me immediately. Jack from Lauren's firm just reached out. It's bad. What are you going to do? Olivia asked softly. I stared at the forged letter, at my sister's desperate attempt to destroy me. The old Katie would have backed down, would have found a way to protect Lauren even now. But I wasn't that person anymore. I'm going to call Jack, I said, standing, and then I'm calling the police. Katie, please. Helen reached for my hand. She's your sister. I pulled away, feeling something final snap inside me. No, she's your creation, and now you both get to live with the consequences. As I walked out of Clara's kitchen, my phone already pressed to my ear, I heard my mother begin to sob. Part of me wanted to turn back, to comfort her, to find some way to fix this mess. But Lauren had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. Jack, I said as the call connected. I have something you need to see, about Lauren, about everything. Sometimes protection means letting people face the consequences of their own actions, even if those people are family, especially if they're family. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Lauren's face as they led her away in handcuffs. She didn't look at me, but her words hung in the air. I hope you're happy now, sister. I wasn't, not even close. Marcus found me in the parking lot an hour later, staring at my reflection in his car window. Your mother's been calling non-stop, he said, touching my shoulder. She wants to know if you're pressing charges. Lauren committed fraud, Marcus. She tried to frame me for it. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. The decision isn't mine anymore. His phone buzzed, another message, then mine, then both again. They're all gathering at your parents' house, he said quietly. Your father thinks we can still fix this as a family. I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make Marcus flinch. Fix this? Lauren stole $500,000, forged documents in my name, and tried to destroy my career. What exactly does he think we can fix? Katie, no. I pulled away from his touch. I'm done fixing things. I'm done being the reasonable one, the understanding one, the one who sacrifices everything to keep the peace. My phone lit up again. Aunt Clara this time. I answered without thinking. They're saying you set her up, Clara said without preamble. Helen is telling everyone you orchestrated this whole thing as revenge for the engagement party. Something snapped inside me. Of course she is. There's more. Clara's voice dropped. Lauren's lawyer is building a case around your supposed vendetta against her. They're going to claim you planted evidence, manipulated documents. Using the forged letter about my mental health as groundwork, I finished. Perfect. Just perfect. Marcus was watching me carefully. What do you want to do? What did I want? I wanted my sister to not be a criminal. I wanted my mother to love me as much as she loved Lauren. I wanted my father to stand up for me just once. I wanted my family to be different people entirely. The engagement party, I said suddenly. It's tomorrow night. We can postpone. No. I turned to face him fully. We're having it. Every last detail exactly as planned. And we're inviting everyone. Everyone? His eyebrows rose. Including my entire family, Lauren's colleagues, the board members she tried to deceive. Everyone. I pulled out my phone and started typing. Let them all come see the truth for themselves. Katie, think about this. I have thought about it. For 30 years, I've thought about it. My fingers flew across the screen. They want to paint me as the unstable one. Fine. Let's give them front row seats to what really happens when I stop playing by their rules. Clara's voice crackled through the speaker. What are you planning? A celebration, I said, hitting send on the mass text. Isn't that what they always wanted? Another chance to make everything about Lauren? Marcus grabbed my phone gently. This isn't you. Maybe it is now. I met his gaze steadily. Maybe this is who I become when I stop letting them write my story. My phone chimed with responses. Shocked replies, confused questions, A single, "How dare you," from my mother. I ignored them all. "If you do this," Marcus said carefully, "there's no going back. Your family—" "My family?" I gestured at the police station behind us. "My sister is in custody for fraud. My mother is already spinning lies to protect her. My father is probably writing checks to lawyers right now." I took my phone back from Marcus. They stopped being my family the moment they decided I was expendable. Another message popped up, from Sarah, Lauren's colleague whom she'd tried to frame. "Count me in. I'll bring the evidence files." Then Olivia. "About damn time. I'll handle the guest list." And finally, Aunt Clara. "Your mother won't survive this." I typed back 3 words. "Neither will I." Because that was the truth, wasn't it? The old Katie, the peacekeeper, the pushover, the eternal second best. She couldn't survive this. Maybe she shouldn't. "Tomorrow night," I said to Marcus, "everything changes. Are you with me?" He studied my face for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Always. But Katie, make sure this is about justice, not just revenge. Don't let them turn you into something you're not." I looked back at the police station one last time. Maybe I'm finally becoming who I should have been all along. The engagement party venue glittered with fairy lights and champagne glasses, a perfect facade for the bomb I was about to detonate. I stood at the entrance, greeting guests with practiced smiles, while Marcus squeezed my hand in silent support. Sarah arrived first, clutching a leather portfolio. "Everything's here, the forged documents, the transfer records, even Lauren's emails about framing me." Then Jack from the firm, his face grim. "The board wants to handle this quietly. They're offering a deal." "Too late," I said, watching my mother's Mercedes pull into the parking lot. "Some things shouldn't stay quiet." Helen swept in wearing black, like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was. Dad trailed behind her, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Katie," Mom's voice carried across the room, "we need to talk, now." I gestured to the small office off the main hall. As we stepped inside, I caught Olivia positioning herself near the door, my back up, ready to intervene. "Lauren made bail an hour ago," Mom said without preamble. "She's on her way here." My carefully constructed plans wavered. "She wouldn't dare. You underestimate what people will do when they're desperate." She pulled out an envelope. "These are from your teenage years. Your therapy sessions, your medication history." The room tilted. "Those records were sealed." "Nothing stays sealed when you know the right people." Her hands trembled slightly. "Stop this now, Katie, or everyone at this party will learn about your breakdown at 16. About the pills, about everything." "You'd do that? Use my worst moments against me?" "To protect my daughter?" "Yes." "I'm your daughter too." She flinched, but her voice stayed steady. "Lauren needs me more." The door opened. Dad stepped in, followed by Marcus. "Helen, that's enough." "Frank, stay out of this." "No." His voice cracked like a whip. "I stayed out of it when you pushed Katie aside for Lauren. I stayed out of it when you turned every milestone in her life into Lauren's spotlight. I won't stay out of it anymore." Mom's face hardened. "You don't understand." "I understand that our daughter committed fraud," he said. "I understand that instead of holding her accountable, you're trying to destroy our other daughter to protect her." "It's not that simple." The door burst open again. Lauren stood there, mascara streaked down her face, still wearing the clothes she'd been arrested in. "Actually, it is that simple." Lauren's laugh was hollow. "I did it, all of it. And you know what, Katie? I'd do it again, because Mom's right. I need her more. I deserve more." The room fell silent. In that moment, I saw us clearly, all of us trapped in roles we'd been playing our whole lives. The golden child, the scapegoat, the enabler, the victim. "You're wrong," I said quietly. "You don't deserve more. You just took more. And I let you, because that's what good sisters do, right? What good daughters do." I reached for the portfolio Sarah had brought, but my hands were shaking too badly. Marcus picked it up instead. "Katie," Mum warned, "if you do this..." "You'll what? Reveal my mental health history?" "Go ahead." I met her eyes steadily. I'm not ashamed of surviving what this family did to me. Lauren lunged for the portfolio, but Marcus stepped back smoothly. She stumbled, catching herself on the desk. "It's over, Lauren," I said. "The truth is going to come out. All of it." "You'll destroy this family," Mum whispered. "No." I moved toward the door. "You did that years ago. I'm just finally stopping the cover-up." As I reached for the handle, Lauren's voice stopped me. "I'll tell them you helped me, that you knew about the fraud all along. It'll be your word against mine, and we both know who Mum will support." I turned back one last time, seeing them clearly. My mother's desperate need for control, Lauren's entitled rage, my father's too late attempts at protection. "Go ahead," I said. "Tell them whatever you want. I'm done playing by your rules." I stepped out into the party, where dozens of faces turned toward me expectantly. My hands were steady now as I picked up a champagne glass. "Thank you all for coming," I heard myself say. "I have a story to tell you." Behind me, I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath, Lauren's muffled sob, my father's heavy sigh. But for the first time in my life, their reactions didn't matter. The truth was finally going to have its moment in the spotlight. The silence after I finished speaking felt like a physical weight. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Conversations died mid-sentence, and dozens of eyes fixed on the evidence projected on the venue's wall. Lauren's fraud laid bare in emails, bank statements, and forged documents. Lauren surged forward, her voice shrill. "This is all lies. She's trying to destroy me because she's jealous. She's always been jealous." "The numbers don't lie, Lauren," Jack said quietly. "Neither do your emails to Sarah discussing how to frame her for your theft." Mom stepped between Lauren and the screen. "This is a private family matter. I must ask everyone to—" "Private?" Sarah's laugh cut through the room. "Like how Lauren privately stole my work, or how she privately tried to destroy my career." "I did it for you." Lauren whirled on Mom. "Everything I did was to make you proud, to be perfect, to be what you wanted." The room collectively inhaled. Mum's face went white. "Lauren," Dad warned, but she was beyond stopping. "Katie was weak. You said so yourself. She needed therapy, needed pills, needed help. But I was strong. I did whatever it took. I became exactly what you wanted." "I never wanted this," Mum whispered. "Liar." Lauren grabbed a champagne glass, hurled it against the wall. "You taught me how to forge signatures, how to manipulate people, how to win at any cost." I moved toward them, but Marcus caught my arm. "Wait," he murmured. "You want to know the truth?" Lauren's voice cracked. "I didn't steal that money for Charles's gambling debts. There were no gambling debts. I took it because I could, because that's what you taught me. Take what you want and damn everyone else." Mum swayed, and Dad finally stepped forward to steady her. "Helen," he said, "it's time." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't—" "Tell them," Dad insisted. "Tell them why you pushed Lauren so hard. Why you couldn't bear to see Katie succeed." "Mom," my voice sounded small even to myself. She turned to me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "You remind me so much of my sister, your Aunt Rebecca." "I don't have an Aunt Rebecca. Not anymore." Mum's shoulders sagged. "She was like you, strong, independent, unwilling to play by the rules. Our mother destroyed her, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. When she died—" Mum's voice broke. "I promised myself I'd never let that happen to my daughters. I thought if I made Lauren strong enough, ruthless enough—" "You'd protect her," I finished, "by teaching her to destroy others first. I thought I was saving her." Mum looked at Lauren, who had crumpled to the floor. "Instead, I turned her into the very thing I feared." The room was utterly silent now, watching our family implode in real time. I felt disconnected, like I was watching a play where I knew all the lines but couldn't change the ending. "What happened to Aunt Rebecca?" I asked. "She killed herself," Dad said quietly. "The day after your mother's wedding, the note she left, it broke something in your mother." Lauren laughed from her spot on the floor, a horrible broken sound. "So that's it? Your sister's death turned you into this? made you twist me into something even worse. Lauren. Mom reached for her, but Lauren scrambled away. Don't touch me. I'm exactly what you made me. And now... She looked around the room, at the evidence still projected on the wall, at her colleagues' faces. Now I've lost everything. No, I said, surprising myself. You haven't lost everything. You've just lost the lie. I walked to the projector and switched it off. The sudden darkness felt appropriate. The police are outside, I said quietly. They've been waiting. It's your choice, Lauren. Walk out with dignity or make them come in. She stared at me for a long moment, then stood shakily. You finally won, sister. No. I met her gaze steadily. We all lost. The only difference is, I'm done playing. As the police led Lauren away, Mum reached for my hand. I let her take it, felt her trembling. Katie, she whispered, I'm so... I know. I squeezed her hand once, then let go. But knowing why doesn't change what happened. Some things can't be fixed. I turned away, found Marcus in the crowd. His eyes held nothing but love and understanding. Some things can't be fixed, but maybe they can be rebuilt into something new entirely. The courthouse steps felt different under my feet this time. No longer threatening, just concrete and stone. Lauren's sentencing had been brief, clinical, 5 years, with possibility of parole. She didn't look at me once. I lingered outside, watching autumn leaves scatter across the plaza until Aunt Clara found me. Your mother's asking for you, she said, settling beside me on the steps. She's been sitting in Rebecca's old room for days, going through photographs. I can't fix her, Clara. The words tasted like freedom. I can't fix any of them. No. She squeezed my hand. But maybe that was never your job. My phone buzzed, a message from Marcus about final wedding preparations. We'd chosen a small ceremony, just close friends and chosen family. My parents' invitation remained unanswered. I found this in Rebecca's things, Clara said, pulling out a worn envelope. She wrote it the day before. Well, it was meant for your mother, but Helen never read it. The paper felt fragile in my hands. Rebecca's handwriting was eerily similar to mine. I'm not running away, I read aloud. I'm choosing myself. There's a difference. My throat tightened. She wasn't weak. No. Clara's voice was gentle. Neither are you. A familiar car pulled up. Dad, looking older than his years. He approached slowly, like I might bolt. The house is sold, he said without preamble. Your mother's agreed to get help. Real help this time. And Lauren has requested no visitors. He sat heavily on my other side. I kept telling myself I was protecting you both by staying neutral. I never realized silence could be its own kind of violence. The autumn wind picked up, carrying Rebecca's letter from my hands. I watched it dance away, her final words scattering like seeds. I'm getting married next week, I said. Dad nodded. I know. I don't need you to walk me down the aisle. I don't need any of the traditional things anymore. What do you need? The question hung between us, heavy with 30 years of unspoken words. I thought about Lauren in her cell, Mom in Rebecca's room, all of us trapped in cycles of protection and destruction. I need you to understand something, I said finally. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not seeking revenge or justice or even closure. I'm just choosing myself. Like Rebecca, Clara murmured. But unlike Rebecca, I continued, I'm still here. I'm still standing. And that has to be enough. Dad's hand found mine, rough and familiar. It's more than enough. My phone buzzed again. Marcus sending a photo of our new house keys. A future waiting to be unlocked. Will you come? I asked Dad. To the wedding? Do you want me to? I paused, realizing the truth of it. I want to stop expecting you to be different people. I want to accept who you are, who I am, and let that be okay. Clara stood, brushing off her skirt. That sounds like healing to me, not forgiveness, Dad asked quietly. Maybe something better. I stood too, feeling lighter than I had in years. maybe acceptance. As if on cue, Marcus's car appeared around the corner. He'd known exactly where to find me, exactly when I'd need him. That's what real love looks like, I realized. Not manipulation disguised as protection, not control masked as care, but simple, steady presence. Helen asked me to give you this, Dad said, holding out a small box. Inside lay a delicate silver bracelet I recognized from old photos. Rebecca's? He nodded. Your mother said. She said you should have it, not because you remind her of Rebecca anymore, but because you chose a different ending. I closed the box without putting the bracelet on. Some inheritances don't need to be worn to be honored. Marcus pulled up, and through the windshield, I could see him waiting patiently, giving me space to finish this moment on my own terms. Behind me stood the courthouse where my sister's fate had been decided. Before me stretched a future I was finally ready to claim. I'll see you at the wedding, I told Dad. It wasn't quite a question, wasn't quite a promise. Like everything else in our new reality, it was simply a choice waiting to be made. I walked toward Marcus, toward tomorrow, leaving the autumn wind to whisper its own endings behind me.
The sound of crystal glasses clinking together always reminded me of tiny bells at a funeral. Delicate, haunting, a sound that should be beautiful, but somehow isn't. Tonight, those chimes echoed through my mother-in-law Eleanor's dining room as she held court at yet another of her impromptu dinner parties. I'm Camille, and until tonight, I thought I had mastered the art of surviving in the Thompson family. Ryan, darling, Samantha was just telling me about her father's new development project. Eleanor's voice carried that particular lilt she reserved for her carefully orchestrated moments. Perhaps you two should discuss it over coffee sometime? My husband shifted in his chair beside me, his fork scraping against bone china. Sure, Mother, that could be interesting. I stabbed my roasted duck breast, watching the pink juice pool around the perfectly arranged vegetables. Eleanor had outdone herself tonight. 12 guests, all strategically placed around her mahogany table like pieces on a chessboard. And there, 3 seats down, sat Samantha, all pearls and precision-curled blonde hair, laughing at something my father-in-law Henry had mumbled. The timing couldn't be better, really, Eleanor continued, dabbing her lips with a monogrammed napkin, especially with Ryan entering this new chapter of his life. The duck turned to ash in my mouth. New chapter? Well, yes. Eleanor's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Changes are inevitable, aren't they? Nothing stays the same forever. Ryan's hand found my knee under the table, but it felt less like comfort and more like restraint. I watched him take a long sip of wine, avoiding my gaze. Speaking of changes, Samantha chimed in, her voice syrupy sweet. My father's always looking for talented architects for his projects. The right connections can make such a difference in one's career. The conversation flowed around me like poison honey, thick with implications. I caught Jessica Adams watching me from across the table, her eyes filled with that particular mix of pity and curiosity that made my skin crawl. Excuse me, I said, pushing back my chair. I need some air. The terrace offered temporary refuge. Behind me, laughter and conversation spilled through the French doors like smoke. I gripped the stone balustrade, counting breaths until I heard familiar footsteps. Cam, you're overreacting. Ryan's voice carried that placating tone I'd grown to hate. Mother's just being mother. I turned to face him. Is she? Because it sounded an awful lot like she was shopping for your next wife. Don't be ridiculous. He ran a hand through his hair. A tell I'd learned meant he was lying. You're reading too much into things. Am I? Then why haven't you looked me in the eye since she mentioned your new chapter? The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. Inside, Eleanor's laugh rang out, sharp and triumphant. We should get back, Ryan said finally. They'll wonder where we've gone. As he turned away, I caught my reflection in the window, composed, polished, the perfect corporate wife in my carefully chosen dress. But something had shifted tonight, like a fault line opening beneath my feet. "Ryan." My voice stopped him at the door. "When did you stop fighting for us?" He paused, hand on the doorknob. "There's nothing to fight about, Cam. Everything's fine." But as I watched him rejoin the party, sliding easily back into his seat beside Samantha, I knew nothing would ever be fine again. Eleanor had finally played her hand, and my husband, my Ryan, had already folded. I straightened my spine and walked back inside, the crystal glasses singing their funeral song. Eleanor wanted a war? Fine, but she'd soon learn that some daughters-in-law don't go quietly into that good night. They get even. 3 days after Eleanor's dinner party, I booked a weekend getaway at the coastal resort where Ryan and I had our honeymoon. The confirmation email sat in my inbox like a challenge, daring me to believe things could be fixed with ocean views and room service. "You're going where?" Ryan's voice crackled through my office phone. "Cam, I have that project deadline." The tide mark. I kept my voice steady, watching my computer screen blur. "Remember, where you promised we'd go back every year?" The silence on his end stretched until I could almost hear him calculating the cost of disappointing his mother versus disappointing me. Again. "Let me check my schedule," he said finally. "I'll call you back." He didn't, but Eleanor did. "Darling," she cooed when I answered. "Ryan mentioned your little trip idea. How wonderful. Henry and I were just saying we needed a break, and Samantha's father has that lovely beach house nearby. We could make it a proper family weekend." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Actually, Eleanor, I was hoping. I've already made reservations for dinner Friday night. The chef there is simply magnificent, though not as magnificent as your cooking, of course." Her laugh tinkled like those damn crystal glasses. "Ryan's so lucky to have a wife who understands the importance of family time." The trap snapped shut before I could dodge it. Say no, and I'm the selfish wife keeping Ryan from his family. Say yes, and watch my romantic getaway turn into another Eleanor production. That evening, I found Ryan in his home office, blueprints spread across his desk like battle plans. "Your mother called me today." He didn't look up. "She mentioned that." "Did she mention she invited herself along on our weekend?" "Cam, don't start." His pencil moved in precise lines across the paper. "You know how she gets about family activities." "This wasn't supposed to be a family activity." I moved closer, placing my hand over his drawing. "This was supposed to be about us." He finally met my eyes, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man who once drove 8 hours just to bring me soup when I was sick at a conference. Then his phone buzzed, Eleanor's special ringtone, and the moment shattered. "I need to take this," he said, reaching for the phone. "Of course you do." I turned away, but not before catching the name on his blueprint. Adams Development Project, lead architect, Ryan Thompson. Jessica Adams' father's company. The same company Samantha had mentioned at dinner. The pieces clicked together with nauseating clarity. That weekend, I watched Eleanor orchestrate every moment like a symphony of subtle humiliation. She'd booked adjoining rooms, ensuring no private conversations. She'd arranged group activities that highlighted Samantha's youth and connections. Even the seating at dinner served her purpose. Ryan between her and Samantha, me relegated to the far end with Henry, who seemed more interested in his scotch than conversation. "Your mother's quite the strategist," I said to Ryan as we prepared for bed. He paused in loosening his tie. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just admiring how thoroughly she's planned everything, right down to making sure the Adams project landed on your desk." "That was my work, not her." "Was it?" I met his eyes in the mirror. "Like this weekend was my idea?" He turned, anger finally cracking his careful facade. "You're the one who wanted to come here." I wanted to come here with my husband. Instead, I got a front row seat to watching him slip away. The words hung between us like smoke. Outside, waves crashed against the shore, the same waves that had witnessed our honeymoon promises. Now they seemed to be counting down the moments until those promises broke completely. "I'm going for a walk," Ryan said, grabbing his jacket. I watched from our balcony as he headed toward the beach. A slim figure detached itself from the shadows of the hotel entrance, falling into step beside him. Samantha's laugh drifted up on the night air, and something inside me hardened into diamond. Enough playing defense. Time to change the game. The cafe where Eleanor held her weekly charity committee meetings looked like it had been decorated by someone who thought quaint meant suffocating. I sat at a corner table, hidden behind an oversized fern, watching my mother-in-law's performance through leaves that needed dusting. "Ladies, the hospital fundraiser simply must outshine last year's gala," Eleanor announced to her devoted audience. "We can't have people saying we've lost our touch." I wasn't supposed to be here, but neither was Samantha, who sat at Eleanor's right hand like a princess in waiting, occasionally touching Eleanor's arm when making a point. The gesture was practiced, perfect, just like the strand of pearls around her neck that matched Eleanor's exactly. My coffee had gone cold when I saw it. The small envelope Eleanor slipped to Samantha beneath a discussion of table arrangements. Samantha tucked it into her designer handbag without missing a beat in her suggestion about wine selections. The meeting dispersed with air kisses and promises of email updates. I waited until Eleanor left before following Samantha, who headed not toward her car, but down the block to the local bank. Inside, I kept my distance, pretending to fill out a deposit slip while watching her approach the safe deposit boxes. The bank employee's voice carried across the quiet space. "Of course, Miss Crawford. Box 247, just like always." Just like always. I left before she emerged, my mind racing. That night, I waited until Ryan was asleep before sliding his keys from his jacket pocket. His key ring included one I'd never seen him use. Small, brass, with numbers that matched a certain safe deposit box. The next morning, I called in sick to work and waited outside the bank. At precisely 10:15, Eleanor arrived for her own weekly visit. I counted to 100 before entering, Ryan's key burning in my pocket. The same employee who had helped Samantha greeted me with professional courtesy. "Mrs. Thompson, how lovely to see you. Your husband already accessed the box earlier this week, but you're certainly authorized." My smile felt stretched across my face. Yes, Ryan mentioned I should check some documents. The box contained exactly what I expected: property deeds, investment papers, marriage certificates, and divorce papers, already drawn up, already bearing Ryan's signature in fresh ink. But there was something else. Letters, dozens of them, spanning months. Correspondence between Eleanor and Samantha's father, methodically planning their children's future. The Adams Development Project was just the beginning. They had mapped out Ryan's entire career, contingent on his marriage to Samantha. My hands shook as I took photos with my phone. Behind me, the bank's door chimed. "Camille!" I turned to find Samantha standing there, her perfect smile faltering. For a moment, we stared at each other like actors who had wandered into the wrong scene. "I suppose Eleanor sent you to check on me?" Her voice dripped fake concern. "She mentioned you weren't feeling well today." "No, she didn't." I closed the box with a decisive click. "But I'm feeling much better now. Amazing what the truth can do for one's health." Her smile tightened. "I don't know what you think you found, but save it." I moved past her, then paused. "Nice pearls, by the way. Eleanor has excellent taste in accessories and replacements." That evening, I sat at our dining room table, documents spread before me like tarot cards telling my future. The front door opened and closed. Ryan's footsteps paused in the doorway. "You're home early," he said. Funny how finding divorce papers with your signature tends to clear one's schedule. The silence that followed told me everything his words couldn't. "Cam, I can explain. Can you explain the letters too? The deals with Samantha's father? Or should I ask your mother about those?" He stepped forward, reaching for me, but I held up my hand. Just don't. "It's complicated," he whispered. "Actually, it's very simple." I stood, gathering the documents. "You chose your mother's vision of your future over our present. I just chose to stop pretending I didn't know." As I walked past him, he grabbed my arm. "Where are you going?" I looked at his hand, then into his eyes. "To make some choices of my own." Linda's kitchen had always been my sanctuary, but tonight it felt like a confessional. The evidence I'd gathered from the safe deposit box lay scattered across her marble countertop while she poured us both generous glasses of wine. "That manipulative witch," Linda muttered, examining the divorce papers. "And Ryan actually signed these?" I traced the rim of my glass. "2 days ago, according to the date. What are you going to do?" The question hung between us like smoke. Through Linda's window, I could see Eleanor's annual charity gala in full swing at the country club across the street. Crystal chandeliers sparkled through floor-to-ceiling windows, while valets parked luxury cars in neat rows. "I should be there tonight," I said. Eleanor made such a point of reminding me about my duties as a Thompson wife. Linda's eyes narrowed. "You're plotting something." "Maybe." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the photos I'd taken. "Did you know Eleanor's been embezzling from her own charity?" The letters weren't just about Ryan and Samantha. They detailed how Eleanor's been funneling donations through shell companies owned by Samantha's father. Linda nearly choked on her wine. "Jesus, Cam, that's criminal?" I smiled, but it felt more like baring teeth. "Yes, it is." My phone buzzed. Ryan's 4th call tonight. I declined it, just as I had the others. "Eleanor's not the only one with powerful friends," I continued. "Remember Jessica Adams? Turns out she's been dying to step into Eleanor's role in the charity circuit. All she needs is the right opportunity." "Cam." Linda's voice carried a warning. "Be careful. Eleanor's dangerous when cornered." "So am I." As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from Jessica. "You were right. Eleanor just announced Samantha as next year's charity chair. The board members are livid." I stood, smoothing my dress. I should make an appearance after all. Would hate to miss the fireworks. "What fireworks?" "The ones that start when the board receives anonymous evidence of Eleanor's financial misconduct. Right about," I checked my watch, "now." Linda grabbed my arm. "You'll burn every bridge." "They're already burning. I'm just controlling the flames." The country club's entrance was chaos when I arrived. Board members huddled in angry clusters, while Eleanor stood at the center, her perfect composure finally cracking. Samantha hovered nearby, her face pale beneath her makeup. "Camille." Eleanor's voice cut through the murmurs when she spotted me. "How dare you show your face here?" "I'm still a Thompson wife," I said sweetly. "For now." Recognition flickered in her eyes. She knew I knew. "Whatever you think you're doing," she hissed, "you're only hurting yourself." "No, Eleanor, I'm just following your example, protecting my interests." I turned to the gathering crowd. Though I suspect the charity board might have different interests to protect tonight. Ryan appeared suddenly, his face tight with anger and something else. Fear? "Cam, we need to talk. Now." "Like we talked about the divorce papers you signed? Or the deal you made with Samantha's father?" The crowd fell silent. Eleanor's perfectly manicured nails dug into her clutch. "You don't understand," Ryan started. "I understand perfectly." I met Eleanor's gaze. "I understand that power only works if people fear losing it. Isn't that right, Eleanor?" She stepped forward, but Henry, quiet, passive Henry, suddenly appeared between us. "Enough, Eleanor," he said softly. "It's over." The police arrived 10 minutes later. I watched from Linda's kitchen window as they escorted Eleanor to a patrol car, her silk gown catching on the door as she ducked inside. "Feel better?" Linda asked, joining me at the window. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to earn Eleanor's approval, about Ryan's betrayal, about all the quiet humiliations I'd endured. "No," I answered honestly, "but I feel stronger." My phone buzzed again. Ryan. This time, I answered. "We need to talk," he said. "Yes," I agreed, watching the police car drive away. "We do." The lease agreement for the old Italian restaurant sat unsigned on my desk, while Henry Thompson stood in my office doorway, looking more alive than I'd seen him in years. "Eleanor doesn't know I'm here," he said, stepping inside and closing the door. "But that building? It belonged to my grandmother. Eleanor's been trying to sell it for years." I studied the property photos spread across my desk. Prime location, historic charm, everything I needed for the restaurant I'd dreamed about since culinary school. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because," Henry's voice strengthened, "the property trust requires family ownership. Eleanor can't sell it without my signature, and you're still family." The implications hung heavy in the air. Before I could respond, my office door burst open. Ryan stood there, tie askew, eyes wild. "You can't do this," he said. "Mother's been arrested. The charity board is pressing charges. Isn't that enough?" I met his gaze steadily. "Your mother's legal troubles are her own doing. This is business." "Business?" He laughed harshly. "You're trying to take everything from us." "Us?" The word tasted bitter. "There hasn't been an us since you signed those divorce papers." Henry cleared his throat. "Ryan, your mother's actions—" "Don't." Ryan's face flushed. "You've never stood up to her before. Why start now?" "Because someone should have years ago." Henry placed a set of keys on my desk. "The property is yours if you want it, Camille. Eleanor kept your grandmother's recipes locked away in the old kitchen safe. Seemed ashamed to let them stay buried." Ryan stepped forward. "Dad, the Adams development is dead." Henry's voice carried a finality I'd never heard before. "Samantha's father pulled out this morning. Seems he's worried about guilt by association." The news hit Ryan like a physical blow. Everything Eleanor had orchestrated, his career, his future, his arranged marriage, crumbling like ancient mortar. "I'll need time to review the lease," I said, watching Ryan's face. "And I'll want my lawyer to look it over." "Of course," Henry nodded. "Take all the time you need." After they left, I sat in my quiet office, running my fingers over the old keys. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Eleanor's replacement charity board meeting tomorrow. Thought you might want to attend." I smiled, remembering Eleanor's face as she was led away from the country club, but the victory felt hollow somehow, like winning a game I never wanted to play. That evening, I drove to the old restaurant. The kitchen's industrial equipment stood silent under dust covers, but the bones were good. I found the safe behind a false panel, just where Henry said it would be. Inside, wrapped in yellowed parchment, lay my grandmother's handwritten recipes, the same ones Eleanor had declared too common for Thompson family gatherings. "I thought I'd find you here." I turned to find Linda in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Henry called," she explained, handing me a cup. "Said you might need a friend tonight." "I'm not sure what I'm doing anymore," I admitted. "This started as revenge, but now it's about choosing who you want to be." Linda surveyed the kitchen. "Someone who destroys, like Eleanor, or someone who creates?" The recipe pages crinkled in my hands. Family history Eleanor had tried to erase, just like she'd tried to erase me. "I'm keeping the restaurant." I decided, but not to spite Eleanor, because my grandmother believed food brings people together, even when they're falling apart. Linda smiled. That's the Camille I know. My phone buzzed again, Ryan calling. But this time, instead of ignoring it or answering with anger, I felt something different. Pity, maybe. Or freedom. I let it ring as I walked the empty dining room, imagining tables filled with laughter, families making memories, life moving forward instead of staying trapped in Eleanor's perfectly controlled past. Tomorrow, I'd call my lawyer. Tonight, I had recipes to read and a future to plan, one that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with reclaiming what was mine all along. The restaurant's opening night should have been my triumph. Instead, I stood in my grandmother's kitchen watching everything fall apart. 3 servers had called in sick. Eleanor's doing, no doubt. The wine delivery was mysteriously delayed. And now this. What do you mean the health inspector is here? I hissed at Linda, who'd volunteered to help manage the front of house. We passed inspection last week. Anonymous complaint, she said. They're required to investigate. Through the kitchen window, I could see the dining room filling up. Jessica had brought half the charity board. Food critics from 2 major papers sat at corner tables. Even Henry was there, sitting alone with an untouched glass of wine. Chef wants to know about the modified menu, my sous chef called out. With the missing deliveries. The kitchen door swung open. Ryan stood there, looking uncomfortable in his suit. Cam, we need to talk. Now. I'm a little busy. I turned back to the stove, checking the sauce that had taken 3 hours to perfect. My grandmother's recipe. Mother's being released tomorrow. The wooden spoon slipped from my hand, clattering against the tile. What? The charges were reduced. She made a deal. He stepped closer. She wants the restaurant, Cam. Says she'll drop the wrongful accusation lawsuit if you sell. Wrongful accusation? The sauce began to bubble, ignored. She embezzled that money. We have proof. We had proof. The documents disappeared from the police evidence room this morning. Of course they had. Eleanor's influence reached everywhere, like poison in water. The health inspector appeared in the doorway, clipboard ready. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of Samantha speaking urgently to the food critics, her perfect smile promising secrets about the kitchen they'd want to hear. Chef! My sous chef's voice carried panic. The seafood delivery. Something's wrong. It's all spoiled. The room spun. Every carefully laid plan, every moment of preparation, crumbling like overcooked pastry. I gripped the counter, feeling the smooth surface my grandmother had once used to roll out pasta dough. You should have known better than to challenge her, Ryan said softly. Mother always wins. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the scared little boy who'd never learned to stand up to his mother, who'd signed divorce papers rather than fight, who'd rather destroy than disappoint. Get out of my kitchen. Cam, get out. The health inspector cleared his throat. Mrs. Thompson, I'll need to see your refrigeration logs. Through the window, I watched the dining room grow restless. Water glasses remained unfilled. Empty bread baskets sat like accusations on white tablecloths. Linda appeared at my side. Tell me what you need. I closed my eyes, remembering my grandmother's voice. A kitchen is a battlefield, Piccola, but we fight with love, not fear. Get me Jessica, I said, opening my eyes, and call that seafood supplier in the next town, the one Eleanor doesn't own. Already did. They're 30 minutes out. I turned to my staff. Modified menu. We're going rustic. My grandmother's emergency recipes, the ones that fed an entire village during wartime. The health inspector raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Thompson, about those logs. Check everything, I said, rolling up my sleeves, because when you're done, I want it on record that we passed. Again. He blinked, surprised by my certainty. The next hours blurred into a symphony of chaos. We transformed the menu into something simpler, deeper. Every dish carried a story, not of revenge, but of survival, of making beauty from whatever remained. Near midnight, as the last critics left looking surprisingly satisfied, I found Henry still at his table. "Eleanor called," he said. "Wanted to know if her plan worked." "Did it?" He smiled, pushing a folder across the table. "I had copies made of everything. The real ones never reached the evidence room." My hands shook as I touched the folder. "Why?" "Because Eleanor didn't just try to destroy you. She destroyed every woman who ever threatened her control, including my mother." He stood. "This restaurant was her prison. Now it's your fortress." I watched him leave, the folder heavy in my hands. Tomorrow, Eleanor would come home, expecting to find ruins. Instead, she'd find me, standing in my grandmother's kitchen, ready for war. Eleanor swept into my restaurant like she owned it, wearing prison like it was merely an inconvenient vacation. The lunch crowd fell silent as she made her way to my grandmother's old table, her calculated entrance perfectly timed for maximum impact. I kept cooking. Through the kitchen window, I watched Samantha slip in behind her, less confident now that her perfectly planned future had crumbled. The Adams development was dead, taking her father's reputation with it. Amazing what a few anonymous tips to the SEC could accomplish. "Mrs. Thompson requests your presence," one of my servers announced. "Does she?" I plated the osso buco, my grandmother's recipe. "Tell her she's welcome to order from the menu like everyone else." Minutes ticked by. Eleanor sat, untouched water glass collecting condensation. The dining room hummed with whispers. The fallen queen's return making for delicious gossip. The kitchen door swung open. Ryan. "Mother's trying to save face," he said. "Just hear her out." "Like you heard me out before signing those divorce papers?" He flinched. "I have the original documents, the ones that prove everything, the embezzlement, the blackmail, all of it. I'm ready to testify." I set down my knife. "Why now?" "Because I'm tired of being afraid." Through the window, I saw Henry enter, taking his usual corner table. Jessica and half the charity board occupied the center tables, vultures circling wounded prey. I wiped my hands and stepped into the dining room. Eleanor's smile remained perfect, practiced. "Darling," she said, "we should discuss terms." "Terms?" I sat across from her. "For what?" "Don't be coy. You've made your point. Now it's time to be reasonable." Reasonable. I tasted the word. "Like when you tried to replace me? Or when you sabotaged my opening night? I protected this family's interests." Her voice hardened. "Everything I did was for Ryan's future." "No." Ryan's voice carried across the room as he approached our table. "Everything you did was for control." Eleanor's smile faltered. "Darling, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." He placed a folder on the table. "So does the FBI's Financial Crimes Division." The color drained from Eleanor's face. Samantha stood abruptly, her chair scraping against hardwood. "You wouldn't?" Eleanor whispered. "I'm your mother." "Yes," Ryan said, "and that's why I waited so long to do this." I watched Eleanor's carefully constructed world collapse in real time. Her eyes darted around the room, seeking allies, finding none. Even Henry stayed seated, sipping his wine. "I can still fix this," she said, reaching for her phone. "I have connections." "Not anymore." Jessica approached, steel beneath her smile. "The charity board voted this morning. Unanimous decision." Eleanor's hand trembled. "After everything I've built." "You built nothing," I interrupted. "You took. From the charity, from your family, from everyone who threatened your control, including Ryan's grandmother." "What?" Ryan turned to Henry, who finally stood. Why do you think this restaurant was empty so long? Henry's quiet voice carried. Your grandmother's success threatened your mother's position in society, so Eleanor drove her out, just like she tried to do to Camille. The truth hung in the air like smoke, acrid and choking. Eleanor's perfect mask cracked, revealing something almost human underneath. I did it for us, she whispered. Everything was for us. No, Mother. Ryan's voice gentled. Everything was for you. Two men in suits appeared at the entrance. FBI, right on schedule. Eleanor saw them and something in her broke. You'll fail without me, she said, but her voice wavered. You all need me. I stood, straightening my chef's coat. Actually, Eleanor, we don't, but you're welcome to order takeout when they allow outside food in federal prison. As they led her away, I caught a glimpse of real fear in her eyes, not of prison, but of irrelevance, of losing the power she'd spent a lifetime building. Ryan stayed behind as Samantha fled and the crowd dispersed. He stared at the empty chair where his mother had sat. I don't know who I am without her influence, he admitted. I touched his shoulder briefly. That's the point. Now you get to find out. Through the window, the afternoon sun painted shadows across my grandmother's old kitchen. Her recipes had survived, her legacy restored. Some victories, I realized, taste better than revenge. The letter from Eleanor arrived on a busy Thursday, carried in with the morning's produce delivery. I recognized her precise handwriting, unchanged by 6 months in federal prison. The envelope sat unopened beside the prep station while I worked, its presence heavy as a cast iron pan. Linda found me on the roof garden at sunset, tending to the herbs my grandmother had once grown here. The unopened letter rested between us like a landmine. The review's out, she said, sliding her tablet across the table. 5 stars. They called it a triumph of tradition and innovation. I brushed soil from my hands. Eleanor would hate that description. Good thing it's not her restaurant. The city stretched before us, lights flickering on one by one. Somewhere out there, Ryan was building his first independent project, affordable housing of all things. Henry had finally sold their mansion, downsizing to a cottage near the beach. Life moved forward with or without Eleanor's permission. You should read it, Linda said, nodding at the letter. I know. The dinner rush came and went. I cooked, tasted, adjusted. Each dish carried a story. My grandmother's resilience, my own transformation, the complex recipe of justice and mercy that had brought me here. Near closing, Henry appeared at the kitchen door. She's being transferred next week, minimum security. I nodded, piping rosettes onto a row of desserts. I heard. She asked about the restaurant. My hand stayed steady. Did she? Said she finally understood why your grandmother fought so hard to keep it. He paused. She's different now, smaller. The letter sat in my pocket, growing heavier by the hour. After Henry left, I climbed back to the roof garden. The herbs released their scent in the night air. Rosemary, thyme, basil. My grandmother's legacy flourishing again. Finally, I opened the letter. Eleanor's words were different from her usual carefully crafted manipulations. She wrote about regret, about fear, about the suffocating weight of maintaining perfect control, about watching her son become himself without her influence, about understanding, too late, the difference between power and strength. The last line caught in my throat. You won by letting go of revenge. I lost by holding on too tight. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Mom's letter? Just read it, I replied. Me too. Dinner tomorrow? I stared at his message. We'd been careful these past months, rebuilding something new from the ashes of our marriage. Not romance, but understanding, maybe even friendship. Your grandmother's carbonara, I texted back, but you're doing the dishes. His response came quickly. Deal. Below, the kitchen staff was cleaning up, their laughter drifting upward. Jessica and Linda's voices carried from the bar, discussing next month's charity event. The restaurant hummed with life, with possibility. I pulled out my grandmother's old recipe book, its pages soft with use. A photograph slipped out, Eleanor and Henry's wedding day. They looked young, unguarded. On the back, in my grandmother's handwriting, love without control, power without fear. Standing at the roof's edge, I tore Eleanor's letter into tiny pieces. The wind caught them, carrying away her confessions, her regrets, her surrender. But I kept the photograph, tucking it back into the recipe book. Some might call it weakness, keeping this small piece of the past. But I'd learned that true strength isn't in destroying every trace of what hurt you. It's in choosing what to preserve, what to transform, what to release. The kitchen below needed my attention. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new recipes, new chances to choose between control and freedom. But tonight, in my grandmother's garden, under stars that had witnessed both triumph and defeat, I finally understood. The best revenge isn't in making others small. It's in growing so large that their shadows can no longer reach you. I closed the recipe book and headed downstairs. There was work to do, stories to cook, life to savor. And somewhere in a minimum security prison, Eleanor Thompson was learning what I'd discovered in this very kitchen. Some ingredients can't be controlled. They can only be transformed.
The turkey was perfect. I'd spent 6 hours on it, basting every 30 minutes, monitoring the temperature like a surgeon watching vital signs. Even my father, who taught me everything I know about cooking, would have been proud. Which is why I couldn't process what I was hearing through my phone. You've humiliated this entire family, Brielle. The turkey was inedible, simply inedible. Diana's voice crackled with that particular brand of venom she reserved just for me. What are you talking about? I followed Grandmother Evelyn's recipe exactly. I had to throw the whole thing away. Do you know how embarrassing it is to explain to our guests why we're serving ham at Thanksgiving? This is exactly why I told Adam you weren't ready to host. My fingers gripped the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. I'm Brielle, and for 3 years I've been trying to prove myself worthy of the Collins family name. But apparently, marrying Adam wasn't enough. Neither was leaving my career in product development to help modernize their restaurant empire's brand identity. And now, according to my mother-in-law, I couldn't even cook a turkey. Diana, I tested that recipe twice last week. The turkey was what, dear? Because I had to watch James's business partners pick at dry, tasteless meat while trying not to grimace. Emily had to run to the store for ham. Ham? At Thanksgiving? I closed my eyes, remembering how proud I'd felt when I'd pulled that golden brown masterpiece from the oven. The skin had crackled perfectly, the meat practically falling off the bone. I'd even taken photos. The photos. Diana, I have pictures of the turkey before I left it in your kitchen. Would you like to see them? A pause. Brief, but telling. Don't be ridiculous. I disposed of that disaster hours ago. The point is, you've embarrassed us all, and quite frankly, I'm concerned about your place in this family, if you can't handle even the most basic traditions. My free hand found my phone's camera roll. There it was, my turkey in all its glory, documented from every angle. Something wasn't adding up. Where's Adam? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He's busy damage controlling your mess naturally. Listen, dear, perhaps it's best if you skip the Christmas celebration. Give everyone some time to forget this incident. The pieces clicked together like a sinister puzzle. Diana had been trying to edge me out since day one, but this was a new low. Actually, I said, I think I'll call Emily right now. I'd love to hear about her emergency ham run. Another pause, longer this time. There's no need to bother Emily. She's busy damage controlling my mess? Funny, I just got a text from her 5 minutes ago. She's at her boyfriend's family dinner in Boston. Has been all day. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. You threw away a perfectly good turkey, didn't you, Diana? Just to make me look bad. How dare you accuse me? Save it, I cut in, surprising myself with the ice in my voice. I'm going to find out exactly what happened to my turkey, and when I do, everyone's going to know what you did, including Adam. Nobody will believe you over me, Diana hissed. I've been part of this family for 35 years. You're just the girl who got lucky with my son. I looked at the photos again, then at the recipe card my father had given me, the one he'd used in his restaurant for 20 years. We'll see about that, I said, and hung up. My hands were shaking as I set down the phone. 3 years of snide comments, backhanded compliments, and subtle undermining had led to this moment. Diana had finally overplayed her hand, and now I had proof. The question was, what was I going to do with it? I opened my contacts and scrolled to Emily's name. It was time to find out just how many other family members were tired of Diana's games. One way or another, this turkey scandal was about to blow up in her face. Adam found me in our kitchen at midnight, staring at the photos on my phone. He dropped his briefcase by the door and loosened his tie, exhaustion etched across his face. Mum called, he said, and my stomach clenched. She's pretty upset. Is she? I swiped through the photos again. Did she mention throwing away my perfectly good turkey? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I know she can be difficult. Difficult? I set my phone down harder than necessary. She sabotaged Thanksgiving dinner just to make me look bad. She lied about Emily getting ham. Bree, please. Adam's voice carried that familiar note of defeat. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. You know how she gets about family traditions. I studied my husband's face, the way he couldn't quite meet my eyes, the slight downturn of his mouth. 3 years of marriage, and still he defaulted to peacekeeping. Show me the garbage, I said. What? If my turkey was so terrible that she had to throw it away, show me the evidence. Right now. Adam shifted uncomfortably. The cleaning service already came. How convenient. I pulled up Emily's text and held it out. Read this. His eyes scanned the message. Having dinner with Jake's family in Boston. Hope your turkey turned out as amazing as the test runs. Send pics. She's lying, Adam. Your mother is lying, and you know it. He leaned against the counter, shoulders slumping. What do you want me to do? Accuse my own mother of what? Of systematically trying to drive me out of this family? Of undermining everything I do? My voice cracked. Of making me feel like I'll never be good enough for her precious son. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Adam moved closer, reaching for my hand. You are good enough, he said softly. More than good enough. But if we confront her directly, she'll just deny everything. You know how she operates. So we do nothing. Let her keep playing these games. We pick our battles. Keep the peace until what? I pulled away from him. Until she succeeds in convincing everyone I'm incompetent. Until she drives us apart. My phone buzzed. A message from James Collins, my father-in-law. Diana mentioned concerns about today. Let's discuss over lunch tomorrow. 1 p.m., the Capitol Grill. Adam read the message over my shoulder and swore under his breath. She's already spinning this her way. Good, I said, surprising us both. Let her dig herself deeper. Bree. No, think about it. Your father's not stupid. He built an empire by reading people. If Diana's lying about this, what else has she lied about? Adam's expression shifted, a flash of recognition crossing his face. The design proposals, he said slowly. The ones that disappeared from your desk last month. And the client meeting she scheduled over our anniversary dinner. The misplaced invitation to Grandmother Evelyn's birthday. We looked at each other, really looked, as 3 years of accidents and misunderstandings crystallized into something darker. I have the photos, I said. I have Emily's text, and tomorrow I'll have lunch with your father. Adam touched my cheek, his fingers trembling slightly. Be careful. Mum's got 30 years of influence behind her. If you're going to expose her... I need proof, I finished. Undeniable evidence that shows everyone who she really is. He nodded, then pulled me close. Whatever you decide to do, he whispered against my hair, I'm with you. No more peacekeeping. I held him tight, breathing in his familiar scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart against mine. For the first time since Diana's call, hope flickered in my chest. But as I thought about tomorrow's lunch, another emotion surfaced. Something colder, more calculated. Diana wanted to play games. Fine. But she'd forgotten something crucial. Before joining the Collins family business, I'd spent years in product development. I knew how to document everything, build a case, and present evidence that no one could ignore. The game was about to change. The Capitol Grille's private dining room felt like a trap. James Collins sat across from me, his usual commanding presence softened by genuine concern. Between us, an untouched plate of Wagyu beef grew cold. Diana's worried about you, Brielle, he said, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. She thinks the pressure of joining the family business might be affecting your judgment. I set down my water glass carefully. Did she mention the turkey? She did. He leaned forward. But we both know this isn't about a turkey. Before I could respond, the door opened. Diana glided in, her Hermes scarf perfectly arranged, her smile razor-sharp. I hope you don't mind me joining, she said, taking the seat beside James. I felt we should discuss this as a family. My phone buzzed in my lap. A text from Adam. Mum just left the office, said she had an emergency. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, watching Diana pour herself water with practiced grace. Actually, I said, I'm glad you're here. We should talk about the design proposals that went missing last month. Diana's hand trembled slightly as she set down the water pitcher. Ancient history, dear. We found them eventually. After the deadline passed, I turned to James. Did you know they were in Diana's desk the whole time? Emily saw them there when she was looking for stamps. That's absurd, Diana cut in. Emily never what? Never goes in your office or never tells the truth. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the photos of the turkey. Like how you told everyone she bought ham on Thanksgiving when she was actually in Boston. James frowned, looking between us. Diana? James, surely you're not going to believe these ridiculous accusations. But her voice had lost its smooth edge. Brielle's clearly... The dining room door opened again. Emily stood there, still in her chef's whites from the restaurant kitchen. Sorry I'm late. Brielle asked me to join. Diana's face went pale. This is a private family matter. I am family, Emily said, sliding into the chair next to me. And I have something to show Uncle James. She pulled out her phone, started playing a video. Diana's voice filled the room. Of course I threw it away. That little upstart thinks she can take my place. James actually listens to her design ideas. My design ideas weren't good enough, but hers. A bitter laugh. Well, we'll see how long she lasts when everyone thinks she can't even cook a basic turkey. The silence that followed was deafening. James stared at his wife of 35 years like he was seeing a stranger. You recorded me. Diana's voice shook with rage. You ungrateful little... I record everything in the kitchen, Emily said quietly. Restaurant policy. You know that, Aunt Diana. You helped write the employee handbook. I watched Diana's carefully constructed world start to crack. She turned to James, reaching for his hand. Darling, you have to understand. Understand what? His voice was ice. That you've been systematically trying to undermine the woman our son loves. That you'd sabotage our family business just to maintain control. I built this family. Diana's composure shattered. I gave up my career for you, for all of this. And now she comes in with her fresh ideas and her perfect cooking and her... She spat the words. Working-class background. And suddenly I'm supposed to just step aside. No one asked you to step aside, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. You did that yourself, with every lie. every manipulation, every attempt to make me feel worthless. James stood up, straightening his suit jacket. Emily, please send that video to my office. Brielle, I believe we owe you an apology. Several, in fact. He looked at his wife. Diana, we'll discuss this at home, in detail. Diana's face contorted. You're choosing her side. After everything I'm choosing the truth, he said simply. Something you might want to try sometime. As they left, Emily squeezed my hand under the table. You okay? I watched Diana's rigid back disappear through the door, thinking about all the carefully planned moves that had led to this moment. The satisfaction I'd expected to feel was there, but it was hollow, tainted by something else, something that felt dangerously like Diana's own bitterness. I don't know, I answered honestly, but I think this is just the beginning. The Collins family estate loomed before me, its windows dark except for one, Diana's study. I sat in my car, watching her shadow move across the curtains, remembering Emily's words from lunch. She's not done. This is when she's most dangerous. My phone lit up with a text from my father. Got your message. Coming tomorrow. Some things you need to know. The front door opened, spilling light onto the driveway. Diana emerged, carrying a box to her car. Even at this distance, I recognized my design portfolios. The ones she'd claimed were accidentally shredded last month. I stepped out of my car. Need help with that? She froze, then straightened her spine. Enjoying your little victory, are you? Those are my designs. Correction, they're company property. She placed the box in her trunk. And since James has temporarily relieved me of my duties, I'm simply organizing things. You mean destroying evidence? Her laugh was brittle. Evidence, please. You have no idea what evidence really looks like. She pulled an envelope from her jacket. Remember when you first joined the company? That brilliant restaurant redesign concept you presented. My stomach dropped. What about it? Funny thing about intellectual property, it's all about who documents it first. She held up the envelope. Would you like to see the dated designs I submitted to the patent office 6 months before you joined us? Amazing how similar they are to yours. That's impossible. I developed that concept. And now you're going to be exposed as a fraud. Her smile was vicious. I wonder how James will feel about his daughter-in-law stealing company designs. How will Adam react when his precious wife is revealed as a cheat? My hands shook. No one will believe you. Everyone will believe the paperwork, the timestamps, the digital trail I've carefully created. She closed her trunk. You thought you could destroy me? Darling, I've been playing this game since before you were born. Heavy footsteps crunched on gravel. Adam appeared from the shadows. Is that why you had me handle all the patent submissions when I first started, Mum? So you'd know exactly how to fake the documentation? Diana's composure cracked. Adam, I kept copies of everything, he continued, his voice eerily calm, including the original submission dates. Did you really think I wouldn't protect my wife? I'm protecting this family. Diana's voice rose. She's changing everything. The company, you, all of it. Someone had to stop her. The only one who needs stopping is you. Adam moved beside me, his hand finding mine. Dad's waiting for those files in his study, all of them. Diana's face contorted. You choose her over your own mother. No, he said quietly. I'm choosing what's right, something you taught me once upon a time. She got into her car without another word, the engine roaring to life. As she sped away, I sagged against Adam. How long have you known? I asked. About the patents, since she first started acting strange about your designs. I didn't want to believe it, but... He pulled me closer. I started documenting everything after that, just in case. My phone buzzed again, another text from my father. Diana tried to buy my restaurant 5 years ago, threatened to destroy it when I refused. Keep your guard up. The pieces clicked together. Diana's obsession with control, her failed design career, her desperate need to maintain power. She hadn't just been trying to push me out, she'd been preparing for this fight long before I entered the picture. We need to tell your father everything, I said, not just about the patents. Adam nodded, but his expression was troubled. She's not going to stop, is she? I thought about Diana's calculated smile, the years of manipulation revealed in those few minutes. The woman had turned sabotage into an art form, and I'd just become her masterpiece project. No, I replied, she's not. But neither am I. We walked toward the house, where James waited, with 30 years of his own suspicions. It was time to unravel Diana's web, thread by careful thread. But as we climbed the steps, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into exactly the kind of chaos she thrived on. The game had changed, but so had the players, and I was done playing defense. My father arrived at our house carrying a worn leather briefcase I hadn't seen since his restaurant days. Adam watched from the kitchen doorway as Dad spread documents across our dining table. 5 years ago, he said, sliding over a letter with Diana's signature, she offered to buy Thompson's, said she'd modernize it, make it part of the Collins empire. You never told me, I said, scanning the aggressive acquisition proposal, because what came after was worse. He pulled out more papers, health department complaints, anonymous reviews, supplier cancellations. All fabricated, all traced back to shell companies she controlled. Nearly destroyed everything I'd built. Adam's knuckles went white against the doorframe. Why would she... Control, my father said simply. Your mother doesn't just want influence, son. She wants to own everything that threatens her. The doorbell rang. Through the window I saw Emily's car in our driveway, and beside it, an unfamiliar Mercedes. That'll be Grandmother Evelyn, Adam said. I called her. The family matriarch entered like a queen, Emily trailing behind her. Evelyn's eyes fixed on the papers covering our table, then moved to my father. Marcus Thompson, she said. It's been too long. Dad straightened. Mrs. Collins. Please, it's Evelyn. She settled into a chair, her presence filling the room. I believe we share a common problem. Emily pulled out her phone, played a new recording. Diana's voice filled the room. Once I release those forged patents, she'll never work in design again. James will have no choice but to fire her. The family will disown her. When was this? I asked. This morning, Emily said. She was talking to her lawyer. Evelyn's expression hardened. 35 years ago, Diana presented James with designs she claimed were hers. I knew they weren't. I'd seen the original artist's work in Paris. But I stayed quiet, hoping she'd prove herself worthy of my son in other ways. She shook her head. I've been paying for that silence ever since. My hands trembled as I gathered the documents. She's going to release the fake patents at the Christmas party next week, in front of everyone. Yes, Evelyn said, but we'll be ready. Adam moved behind my chair, his hand on my shoulder. How? Because, my father pulled out one final document. I kept everything from when she tried to destroy my restaurant, including emails she didn't know could be traced. Emily leaned forward. And I have recordings going back months. The kitchen cameras catch everything. I have the original patent paperwork, Adam added. And I, Evelyn said, have 35 years of carefully documented lies, including proof about those Paris designs. The weight of it all, the evidence, the years of manipulation, the carefully constructed plan for revenge, suddenly felt suffocating. This will destroy her, I whispered. She's trying to destroy you, Emily reminded me. I know, but... I stood up, pacing. What if we're becoming just like her, playing these games, plotting revenge? There's a difference, my father said quietly, between revenge and justice. Is there? I turned to Adam. Your mother is horrible, but she's still your mother. Can you really do this to her? Adam's face was torn between pain and determination. She's doing this to herself. Has been for years. Evelyn rose, her movements deliberate. Diana will be at the Christmas party tomorrow night, ready to humiliate you in front of everyone we know. The question isn't whether we can do this to her. It's whether we can let her continue destroying lives. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Diana's lawyer just contacted me about patent violations. Meeting tomorrow morning. Need you there. The trap was closing, but I wasn't sure anymore who was caught in it, Diana or all of us. Okay, I said finally. But we do this right, not for revenge, but for truth. And I looked at Adam, saw the conflict in his eyes. We give her one chance to confess, one chance to stop this before it goes too far. Evelyn nodded slowly. Tomorrow night, then. One way or another, this ends. We spent the next hour planning, each person adding their piece to the puzzle. But as I watched these people, I loved plotting Diana's downfall. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were crossing a line, one we might never be able to uncross. The Collins family Christmas party sparkled with false cheer. I watched Diana work the room, her silver dress catching the light as she moved from group to group, whispering, smiling, poisoning the well before I could even speak. She's already shown them the patents, Emily murmured, appearing at my elbow with 2 champagne flutes. Half the board members won't even look at you. I took the champagne but didn't drink. Where's Adam? Still trying to reach his father. Diana's lawyers got to him first this morning. Across the room, Diana caught my eye and raised her glass in mock salute. The folder tucked under her arm, the one containing her fabricated evidence, seemed to pulse like a bomb waiting to detonate. It's time, Evelyn said, joining us. Before she... The room fell silent as James Collins stepped onto the small stage where the band had been playing. Diana moved to join him, triumph written across her face. Where's Adam? I whispered again, more urgently. Ladies and gentlemen, James began, his voice tight. I'm afraid I have a rather serious announcement to make regarding some recent discoveries about patent infringement within our company. My heart stopped. This wasn't the plan. James was supposed to wait. Diana reached the stage, that damned folder open in her hands. James, darling, perhaps I should... No, he cut in. I think as CEO I should handle this. He turned to the crowd. It seems someone has been stealing designs and claiming them as their own. I stepped forward, the evidence from my father burning in my purse. Mr. Collins, Brielle, his voice was ice. I'm sorry, but given the evidence presented this morning, I'm going to have to ask for your resignation. The room erupted in whispers. Diana's smile widened. That evidence is fake, I said, my voice shaking. I can prove... We have dated documentation, Diana interrupted smoothly. Patents filed months before you joined the company. Really, dear, did you think you wouldn't get caught? Show them the real patents, I demanded, reaching for my purse. But when I opened it, the documents were gone. Emily's sharp intake of breath matched my own rising panic. They were just here, she whispered. I saw them an hour ago. Diana's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. Looking for these? She pulled another set of papers from her folder. My father's evidence. Found them in your purse while you were helping in the kitchen. Really, trying to forge evidence to defend yourself. That's rather desperate, don't you think? The room spun. Everything we'd planned, every piece of evidence we'd gathered, she'd somehow stayed one step ahead. Where's Adam? I asked again, my voice cracking. Oh, he won't be joining us, Diana said. He's quite upset about discovering his wife's deceptions. Isn't that right, James? James nodded grimly. He's the one who confirmed the original patent dates this morning. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Adam had verified her lies, but he knew. No, Emily started. That's not... Emily, dear, Diana cut in. The kitchen needs you. Unless you'd like to join Brielle in unemployment... I watched Emily's face crumple as she backed away, leaving me alone in the center of the room. Evelyn had vanished. My father's evidence was in Diana's hands. And Adam... Security will escort you out, James said, not meeting my eyes. Your personal items will be sent to you. Diana stepped down from the stage, pausing as she passed me. I warned you, she whispered. You never had a chance. As security approached, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window, alone, surrounded by hostile faces, everything I'd built crumbling around me. Diana hadn't just outmaneuvered me, She'd turned my own weapons against me, used my own husband to deliver the killing blow. The guard's hand touched my elbow. Through the crowd's murmurs, I heard Diana's voice one last time. "Don't worry, dear. I'm sure you can find work somewhere, though perhaps not in design, or restaurants, or really anywhere in the city." They led me out into the cold, and the door closed behind me with a final damning click. I made it 3 steps into the parking lot before Adam's voice cut through the December air. "Wait!" He sprinted toward me, clutching a laptop. Behind him, Emily and Evelyn emerged from a side door, followed by my father. "We don't have much time," Adam said, breathing hard. "Mum's lawyers are already drawing up cease and desist orders." "You verified her patents," I said, the betrayal still raw in my throat. "I verified them were fake." He opened the laptop. "Every document she submitted this morning has digital timestamps from last week. I just needed her to think she'd won so she'd present them publicly." Inside, we could hear Diana's voice rising above the murmurs, probably spinning more lies about my disgrace. But something else caught my attention, a red light blinking on Adam's laptop screen. "Is that—" "Live streaming to the boardroom," Emily said, grinning. "Every word she's saying right now is being recorded and transmitted to the company's senior partners." "But that's not all," my father added, pulling out his phone. "Remember those supplier cancellations she orchestrated against my restaurant? The payments all traced back to one of her private accounts." Evelyn stepped forward, her eyes gleaming. "Shall we go back inside? I believe I have something to say about those Paris designs she stole 35 years ago." The ballroom fell silent when we re-entered. Diana's triumph turned to confusion, then fear, as she saw us all together. "What is this?" she demanded. "The truth," Adam said, turning his laptop toward the crowd. The screen showed a split view, Diana's forged patents on one side, the digital timestamps proving their recent creation on the other. "Those are," Diana started. "Fake," James finished, his voice heavy with realization. "Just like the designs you claimed were yours in Paris." Diana's head snapped toward Evelyn. "You wouldn't dare." "I've dared worse, my dear." Evelyn's voice carried across the room. "Like keeping every letter from the real designer threatening legal action, the ones you thought I'd destroyed." Diana laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You have no proof of anything." "Actually," Emily stepped forward, holding up her phone. "We have your confession from the kitchen, about the turkey, the patents, everything. And thanks to company policy, the one you helped write, all kitchen recordings are admissible in legal proceedings." The room erupted in whispers. Board members pulled out phones, executives huddled in corners. Diana's carefully constructed world was unraveling thread by thread. "James," she pleaded, turning to her husband, "you can't believe—" "The supplier payments to sabotage Thompson's restaurant," he cut in. "Those came from our joint account. I checked this morning." Diana's face contorted. "Everything I did for this family. To protect us from people like her." She jabbed a finger at me. "She's changing everything, destroying everything we built." "No, Mother," Adam said quietly. "You did that yourself." Diana looked around wildly, seeing support crumble, allies turn away. But instead of backing down, something in her snapped. "You ungrateful little witch," she snarled, lunging for me. "I'll destroy you." My father stepped between us, his voice cutting like a chef's knife. "Like you tried to destroy my restaurant, my reputation, my daughter's career." Diana froze, realizing too late that her outburst was still being live-streamed to the boardroom. "Diana," James said, his voice heavy with finality, "I want you out of this house, tonight, and expect to hear from our lawyers in the morning." The security guards who'd escorted me out minutes earlier now moved toward Diana. But before they reached her, she straightened her spine, smoothed her dress, and managed one last venomous smile. "Congratulations, Brielle. You've won this round. But remember, you had to become exactly like me to do it." As they led her away, her words hung in the air like smoke. I felt Adam's hand find mine, squeezing gently. Around us, the family began to gather, not in judgment now, but in support. But Diana's parting shot had found its mark. In destroying her, had I become her? The victory felt hollow, tainted by the truth in her final accusation. The game was over, but the cost of winning remained to be seen. The kitchen smelled of roasting turkey and fresh herbs. I adjusted the oven temperature, checking the bird's color through the glass. Golden brown, perfectly done. Just like Thanksgiving, except this time, no one would throw it away. "Need help?" Emily asked from the doorway. "Almost finished." I pulled out my phone, took a photo of the turkey. Old habits die hard. The Collins family waited in the dining room. James, Evelyn, Adam, even my father. Our first family dinner since Diana's departure. The divorce papers had been signed yesterday. "The board approved your redesigned proposal," Emily said, setting plates on the counter. "Uncle James wants to start implementation next month." I nodded, but my eyes drifted to the envelope sitting unopened on the kitchen island. Diana's handwriting, her final words before leaving the city. I'd found it in our mailbox this morning. "You don't have to read it," Adam said, appearing behind Emily. He'd been watching me eye that envelope all day. "I know." But I picked it up anyway, broke the seal. Inside was a single photograph. Diana in Paris 35 years ago, standing beside a design board. Her smile was different then, genuine, full of hope. On the back, she'd written, "We're more alike than you think. That's what terrifies me." "Brie?" Adam touched my shoulder. "The turkey's ready." I slipped the photo back into the envelope, tucked it into my recipe box beside my mother's old cards. Some things you keep, not because they're pleasant, but because they remind you of who you don't want to become. The turkey came out perfectly. I carved it at the table while James discussed the company's future, while Emily detailed her plans for the restaurant division, while Evelyn shared stories of family dinners past. My father watched me with quiet pride, and Adam's hand found mine under the table. But between the laughter and plans and healing, Diana's words echoed. "We're more alike than you think." Maybe she was right. Maybe we shared the same drive, the same determination, the same capacity for calculated revenge. But there was one crucial difference. I had a choice. Every day I could choose between protecting what I loved and destroying what I feared. "A toast," James raised his glass. "To family." "To truth," Evelyn added. "To fresh starts," Emily chimed in. I looked at Adam, saw in his eyes the same question that had haunted me since that night. Had justice been worth the cost? "To choices," I said finally, raising my glass, "and to the people who help us make the right ones." The crystal clinked, the conversation flowed, and slowly, the weight of the past months began to lift. Diana was gone, but she'd left behind more than just wreckage. She'd left a warning, a mirror, a chance to choose a different path. Later, as I packed leftovers for everyone to take home, a new tradition perhaps, I found myself humming my father's old kitchen song, the one he'd sung during hard times at the restaurant, about how the finest meals come from the hottest fires. "You know," Adam said, wrapping his arms around my waist, "most people would have broken under what she did to you." "Maybe," I leaned back against him, "or maybe we just need to remember that revenge isn't the only way to protect what matters." Through the kitchen window, I could see my father helping Emily load containers into her car, James and Evelyn walking arm in arm toward their driver. Family, messy, complicated, worth fighting for, but not worth destroying yourself over. I closed the recipe box, Diana's photos safely buried beneath years of family history and love expressed through food. Some recipes you follow exactly, others you adapt, and some you leave behind entirely. The choice, I realized, had always been mine to make. "Come on," I told Adam, handing him the last container of leftovers. "Let's go home. I'm thinking of trying a new recipe tomorrow." He smiled, understanding what I meant. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, loving deeply, and leaving the bitterness behind. even if some small part of you never forgets how to make it.
I stand frozen in my graduation gown, staring at the suitcase by my father's feet. The blue polyester of my robe suddenly feels like it's choking me, the tassel from my cap tickling my cheek like an unwanted touch. Dad's hands are trembling as he zips up his jacket, and I just know, that whatever comes out of his mouth next is going to shatter everything. I'm Peyton, and this is the moment my family started to die. I can't do this anymore, sweetheart. His voice cracks on the endearment. Your mother and I, we've tried. God knows we've tried. The house behind him is dark, even though it's only 7 in the evening. Mom should be here. She should have been at my graduation too, but she claimed the business needed her. Now I wonder if that was ever true. Where's Tommy? I managed to ask, thinking of my little brother who's probably hiding somewhere inside, confused and scared. Upstairs with his iPad. Dad swallows hard. I already said goodbye to him. The rage hits me like a physical blow. You told him before me. On my graduation day. I didn't plan this, Peyton. I swear. But I saw her with him again today and... him. The word tastes bitter on my tongue. Dad's face twists. Eric Dawson. The new business consultant your mother hired. Though I suspect consulting isn't all they've been doing. My diploma falls from my numb fingers, the leather holder clattering against the porch steps. Inside, I hear footsteps, and then my mother's voice rings out, sharp and defensive. Michael. What are you doing? She appears in the doorway, and I notice things I've been blind to for months. The expensive new highlights in her hair. The designer blouse that's just a bit too young for her. The guilty flutter of her hands as she sees Dad's suitcase. Linda. Dad's voice is dead. I was just leaving. Congratulations on destroying our family. Don't you dare put this all on me. Mom steps forward, her heels clicking on the porch boards. You checked out of this marriage years ago. I worked 60-hour weeks to keep River Clean Solutions afloat. And I was alone. Always alone. I back away from both of them, my graduation gown swishing against the steps. Through the front window, I catch a glimpse of movement, Tommy's small face peering down from upstairs, his iPad forgotten. Stop it, I whisper, then louder, stop it. They both turn to me, as if just remembering I exist. Mom's face softens. Honey, I'm sorry. This isn't how we wanted. Dad's laugh is ugly. There is no we anymore, Linda. Just you and Eric, right? Planning your future while I was killing myself to save our company. A car pulls into our driveway, headlights sweeping across us like a spotlight. My stomach drops as I recognize the sleek BMW. Eric Dawson steps out, his expensive suit and perfectly styled gray hair making him look like some corporate vampire. Everything okay here? His voice is smooth, concerned, and completely fake. Mom straightens, something hard settling over her features. Everything's fine, Eric. Michael was just leaving. Dad grabs his suitcase, and I reach for his arm. Please, I say, not even sure what I'm begging for. He kisses my forehead, whispering, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'll call you tomorrow. Then he's gone, walking past Eric without a glance. Eric moves to stand beside my mother, his hands settling on her lower back in a gesture that's far too familiar. I look at them, my mother and this stranger who somehow replaced my father, and something cold and sharp takes root in my chest. Tommy appears in the doorway, his small hand clutching the frame, and I make a decision. They want to play happy families. Fine. But I'm going to burn their little fantasy to the ground. I just need to figure out how. 3 days after Dad left, Eric moved into our house. He brought designer luggage and expensive suits that now hang where Dad's work clothes used to be. I watch him settle in like some invasive species, spreading his influence room by room while Tommy huddles in corners, clutching his iPad like a shield. "We're having a family dinner tonight," Mom announces at breakfast, her voice bright and brittle. "Eric wants to discuss some exciting changes at the company." I stab my fork into my eggs. "Really?" "Because last time I checked, River Clean Solutions was doing fine without changes." "The business world doesn't stand still, Peyton." Eric's voice oozes from the doorway. He's already dressed for the office, his silver Rolex catching the morning light. "Your father's management style was traditional. We need to modernize." Tommy shrinks in his chair as Eric ruffles his hair in passing. I notice how my brother wipes his head afterward, a quick, furtive motion. "Speaking of modernizing," Mom says, not meeting my eyes, "Eric thinks it might be best if you postponed college for a year. Help out at the company, learn the business from the ground up." The fork clatters from my hand. "What?" "It's a smart move," Eric adds, pouring himself coffee into Dad's favorite mug. "College isn't going anywhere, and this way you'll have real-world experience. Dad already promised me." "Your father isn't here anymore," Mom snaps, then softens her tone. "Honey, things are different now. We need to adapt." I push away from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. "I need to check on Grandma Margaret." "Actually," Eric interjects, "Linda and I were thinking of selling the old house. Your grandmother would be more comfortable in assisted living." The room goes silent. Even Mom looks shocked. "We haven't discussed that yet, Eric. It's worth considering. The property values in that neighborhood are excellent." I grab Tommy's hand. "Come on, buddy. I'll walk you to school." Outside, Tommy's small fingers squeeze mine. "I don't like him," he whispers, as if Eric might hear through walls. "Me neither, kiddo." We walk in silence until Tommy asks, "Is Dad ever coming back?" My throat tightens. "I don't know. But I'm not going anywhere, okay?" At Grandma Margaret's house, I find her in her study, surrounded by old business files. She looks up, her eyes sharp despite her age. "I wondered when you'd come. Eric wants to sell your house." She snorts. "Of course he does. Just like he wants to sell the Richardson contract and outsource our cleaning staff." "What?" I sink into a chair. "Those families have worked for us for decades. Eric Dawson doesn't care about families." She slides a folder across her desk. "Look at this. His previous consulting jobs. 3 companies in 5 years, all sold off in pieces after he'd modernized them." I scan the documents, my hands shaking. "Does Mom know?" "Your mother sees what she wants to see right now." Grandma's voice softens. "But you, my dear, you see everything, don't you? I need to stop him." "Yes, you do." She opens another drawer, pulls out more files. "Start with these. Financial reports from the last 6 months. Notice anything strange about the new equipment purchases?" I study the numbers, remembering Dad's lessons about business accounting. Then I see it, inflated prices, ghost invoices, money disappearing into consulting fees. He's bleeding the company. Smart girl. Grandma smiles, but it's sharp as a blade. "Now, what are you going to do about it?" My phone buzzes, a text from Mom reminding me about dinner. I think about Tommy, about Dad's empty closet, about Eric wearing his smug smile while he dismantles our family's legacy piece by piece. First, I say, I'm going to that family dinner. Then I'm going to find out exactly where that money's going. Grandma nods, satisfied. Be careful, Peyton. Men like Eric don't like being challenged. Good. I tuck the files into my bag. Because I don't like men who steal from my family. As I leave, I notice a photo on Grandma's desk, Mom and Dad on their wedding day, young and happy, with baby me between them. The glass is cracked, splitting the image right down the middle. Some breaks, I'm learning, aren't accidents at all. The family dinner turns into a corporate ambush. Eric stands at the head of our dining table, Dad's spot, tapping his wine glass with a fork. Behind him, a projection screen shows River Clean Solutions logo, twisted into something sleek and soulless. The future, he announces, is automation. I grip my water glass so hard my knuckles whiten. Tommy sits beside me, pushing peas around his plate, while Mom beams at Eric like he's delivering gospel. By outsourcing our cleaning crews and implementing automated systems, we'll increase profit margins by 40%. Eric clicks through slides showing charts and graphs. The Richardson contract alone is costing us. Those are people, I cut in. Not cost margins. The Richardsons have worked with us since before I was born. Eric's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Business isn't about sentiment, Peyton. It's about survival. Funny, we survived just fine before you showed up. Peyton. Mom's voice cracks like a whip. That's enough. I push back from the table. I need some air. Instead of going outside, I slip into Dad's old home office. Eric hasn't colonized this room yet, probably because Mom keeps it locked. Good thing Dad taught me how to pick locks when I was 12. I'm halfway through the filing cabinet when I hear voices in the hallway. I duck behind the desk just as the door opens. The board meeting's tomorrow, Eric says. Once they approve the restructuring, we can move forward with the asset liquidation. A voice I don't recognize responds, and the old woman. Margaret won't be a problem much longer. I've already contacted Sunset Valley Care Home. Linda agrees her mother-in-law needs specialized attention. What about the girl? Peyton. Eric laughs. She's a child playing at business. By the time she figures anything out, it'll be too late. My phone buzzes in my pocket. I hold my breath, but they're already moving away, their footsteps fading. When I check my phone, it's a text from Dad, call me. Important. I wait until I hear Eric and Mom laughing in the living room before sneaking out. In the garden, crickets mask my whispered conversation. The Richardson contract, Dad says when I explain what I heard. That's where he'll start. Check the new supplier agreements. Eric's probably setting up shell companies to funnel money through inflated service contracts. Already found them. But Dad, he's planning something with Grandma Margaret. I know. She called me earlier. Listen, Peyton, there's something else. The company bylaws. The porch light flicks on. I spin to see Eric watching me through the window. I have to go, I whisper. Be careful, sweetheart. Men like Eric don't like being challenged. I know. Back inside, Eric corners me in the kitchen. Lovely night for a garden chat. Just getting some fresh air. You know, Peyton, I've been thinking about your college plans. He leans against the counter, blocking my exit. There's an excellent business program at State. Close to home. We could even set you up with an internship at one of my associates' firms. The threat is clear, take the offer and get out of the way, or else. Thanks, I say, matching his fake smile. But I think I'll learn more staying right here. His expression hardens for a split second before smoothing over. Your mother worries about you, you know. All this resistance to change, it's not healthy. Neither is forcing your girlfriend's mother-in-law into a nursing home. Eric's mask slips completely. He steps closer, his cologne suffocating. You should be very careful about what accusations you make, little girl. Family businesses are fragile things. Accidents happen. Is that a threat? It's business advice. From someone who knows how the game is played. I meet his gaze. Funny thing about games, Eric. Sometimes new players change all the rules. Tommy appears in the doorway, his presence breaking our standoff. I brush past Eric, taking my brother's hand. Sweet dreams, Eric calls after us. Tomorrow's going to be a very interesting day. In my room, I pull out Grandma's files and my laptop. Eric wants to play games. Fine. But he's about to learn that some little girls grow up studying how to win. I wake to the sound of sirens. Red and blue lights strobe through my window, and my first thought is of Tommy. I'm halfway to his room when I hear Mom screaming from downstairs. Grandma Margaret's house is on fire. The next hours blur into a nightmare of smoke and questions. I stand on her front lawn, watching firefighters battle the blaze while Eric comforts Mom nearby. His arm around her shoulders makes my skin crawl. It appears to have started in the study, the fire chief tells us. Electrical fault, probably. The study. My voice sounds strange, even to me. Where all the business records were kept. Eric's head turns sharply. The fire chief continues, fortunately, your grandmother wasn't home. Something about a last-minute dinner with friends. I remember Dad's words about being careful, about Grandma's call to him. She knew. Somehow, she knew this was coming. Such a tragedy, Eric says, his voice dripping concern. Thank God Margaret wasn't here. Linda, darling, perhaps now's the time to discuss that care facility. No. The word comes out like a whip crack. Mom pulls away from Eric. Peyton, please. This is hardly the time. Your boyfriend just lost all of Grandma's business records in a convenient electrical fire, and you want to ship her off to a nursing home. I step closer, my voice dropping. Are you really this blind, Mom? Eric moves between us. You're upset, Peyton. We all are. But throwing around accusations. Where were you tonight, Eric? When the fire started. His smile turns razor sharp. Careful, little girl. Grief makes people say foolish things. A police officer approaches. Miss Rivers. We found something unusual in the study. Would you come take a look? In the charred remains of Grandma's office, the officer points to a small safe, its door hanging open. Empty, he says. Recently opened, by the looks of it. Any idea what might have been inside? I think of the files Grandma showed me, the evidence of Eric's past schemes. No, I lie. No idea. Back outside, I slip away from the chaos and call Dad. No answer. Then Grandma. Straight to voicemail. My hands shake as I text them both. Where are you? Peyton. Tommy's small voice makes me jump. He's standing in our driveway, clutching his iPad. I saw something. I follow him inside to his room, where he pulls up his tablet's camera roll. I couldn't sleep, he whispers. I was watching out the window. The photo is grainy in the dark, but clear enough. Eric, walking from his car to our house, carrying something that looks like a safe box. When was this? Just before the sirens. Tommy's voice trembles. Is Grandma okay? She's fine, buddy. I hug him tight, my mind racing. But I need you to delete that photo, okay? And don't tell anyone you showed me. Are the bad things going to stop now? I kiss his forehead, remembering Eric's threats about accidents and fragile businesses. Soon. I promise. My phone buzzes, a text from an unknown number, safe. Document secure. Wait for my signal. M. Relief floods through me, followed immediately by rage. Eric thought he could burn away the evidence, but Grandma was one step ahead. Now I just need to figure out his next move before. Peyton. Mom calls from downstairs. Eric wants to discuss the board meeting tomorrow. Given what's happened, he thinks it's best if you don't attend. I look at Tommy's photo one more time before he deletes it. Coming, Mom. Let Eric think he's won. Let him believe his little fire destroyed everything. But he's about to learn what happens when you try to burn down a Rivers woman's legacy. We don't just rise from the ashes. We bring the whole damn house down with us. The coordinates arrive at dawn, latitude and longitude sent from Grandma's burner phone. I find her in an old diner 50 miles outside town, looking perfectly composed despite being officially missing for 24 hours. You're late, she says, stirring her coffee. The board meeting starts in 2 hours. You could have warned me about the fire. She slides a thick manila envelope across the table. Would you have let me do what needed to be done? Inside are documents, bank statements, and photographs, Eric with various women, all looking remarkably like Mom, all connected to businesses he'd destroyed. But it's the last document that makes my hands shake, ownership papers for River Clean Solutions, dated 3 months ago, with my name on them. Why? Because I saw this coming. Grandma's eyes are steel. Your mother was already lost to his manipulation. Your father was too honest to fight dirty. But you, my dear, you have both my cunning and your father's moral compass. Eric thinks he destroyed everything in the fire. Eric thinks a lot of things. She pulls out one final document. Like how he's going to vote me out at today's board meeting, using shares he doesn't actually own. My phone buzzes, Mom asking where I am. Then another text, Dad, saying he's back in town. What's the play? I ask Grandma. Go to the meeting. Let Eric make his move. Then. She smiles, and I see where I get my capacity for revenge. Show him what happens when he underestimates a Rivers woman. At home, Eric's already in his board meeting suit, practicing his presentation. Mom fusses with his tie while Tommy watches cartoons, deliberately not looking at them. Where were you? Mom demands when I walk in. Visiting Dad. Eric's hands pause on his laptop. Michael's back in town. Just passing through. I head upstairs to change, but Eric follows. The board meeting is private, he says. Family only. Funny you should mention family. I turn to face him. How's Jessica Carter doing? Or Sarah Mills? Or any of the other women whose companies you destroyed? His facade cracks, just for a moment. Careful, little girl. You're playing with fire. You'd know all about that, wouldn't you? The doorbell rings. Through the window, I see Dad's car in the driveway. Eric's face darkens. Whatever you think you're doing, he says, remember, accidents don't just happen to buildings. I step closer, dropping my voice. Threaten my family again, and you'll learn exactly how much of my grandmother's blood runs in my veins. Downstairs, Mom's voice rises in shock. Michael. What are you doing here? Board meeting, Dad says. I'm still a shareholder, remember. I dress quickly in Grandma's old power suit, found hanging in my closet with a note, time to take back what's ours. In the car, Mom sits between Eric and Dad, the tension thick enough to choke on. Tommy hugs my arm, whispering, are you going to fix it today? Watch and learn, little brother. The boardroom is packed, shareholders, lawyers, and the Richardson family, who Eric didn't expect to show up. He takes his place at the head of the table, confidence oozing from every pore. Today, he begins, we vote on the future of river clean solutions. The old guard has failed us. It's time for modern leadership. Actually, I interrupt, standing. First, we need to verify voting rights. Eric's smile freezes. That's not necessary. It is when you're trying to vote with shares you don't own. I pull out Grandma's documents. Because as of 3 months ago, River Clean Solutions belongs to me. The room erupts. Mom gasps. Dad sits back, a small smile playing at his lips. And Eric looks like a man watching his castle crumble. This is ridiculous, he sputters. Linda, tell them. Tell them what? Grandma's voice cuts through the chaos as she walks in. How you plan to strip this company bare? Or should we discuss last night's fire first? Eric lunges for the documents. I step back, watching his desperation turn to fury. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about letting them destroy themselves. Eric's laughter cuts through the boardroom chaos. You really think you've won something here, don't you? He pulls out his phone, tapping quickly. Check your email, everyone. Now. The room fills with notification chimes. I open the message and feel my stomach drop. Security camera footage from Dad's office, the night before he left. Mom's there, crying, while Dad shouts. But the audio's been edited, spliced together to make it sound like Dad's threatening her, demanding she sign over company assets. Domestic abuse allegations are messy things, Eric says smoothly. Especially when the abuser's daughter suddenly gains control of the family business. Makes you wonder about coercion, doesn't it? Dad stands. That's not what happened. The footage speaks for itself. Eric turns to Mom. Linda, darling, you don't have to be afraid anymore. Mom's face is ash white. Michael never, he wouldn't. Tell them, I demand. Tell them he's lying. But Mom just sits there, tears streaming down her face, and I realize Eric's been planning this moment for months. He's poisoned her mind so completely that maybe she actually believes it now. I move to suspend all ownership transfers pending investigation, Eric announces. All in favor. Hands rise across the table. The Richardson family looks at Dad with disgust. Grandma starts to speak, but Eric cuts her off. Margaret, given your apparent involvement in this coerced transfer, you might want to consult a lawyer before saying anything else. The ownership documents in my hands suddenly feel worthless. Eric's turned my triumph into evidence of conspiracy. Worse, he's destroying Dad's reputation, and using Mom's genuine pain and confusion as his weapon. You're going to prison for that fire, I say, but my voice shakes. What fire? Eric's smile is serpentine. The one that conveniently destroyed any evidence of your grandmother's illegal ownership transfer. The one that started in her study, where she kept the security footage backup drives. Interesting timing. The board members murmur. I watch our allies turning against us in real time. Linda, Dad tries again. You know me. 20 years of marriage. 20 years of controlling everything, Eric interrupts. The business, the money, your wife's every move. But that's over now. Mom stands abruptly. I need air. I'll come with you, Eric says, but she shakes her head. No. I need to be alone. She hurries out. I move to follow, but Eric blocks my path. The board needs to vote on freezing your assets. You're not going anywhere. This isn't over, I hiss. Oh, but it is. He leans close, whispering. By the way, Tommy's school called. Seems he never arrived this morning. Probably just lost track of time, playing in the park. Kids do that sometimes, don't they? Wander off. My blood turns to ice. What did you do? Me? Nothing. But children are so vulnerable these days. Streets aren't safe like they used to be. Dad grabs my arm. Peyton. What's wrong? I pull out my phone, calling Tommy's school. No answer. Try his phone. Straight to voicemail. Tick-tock, Eric murmurs. Better choose quickly, stay here and fight for your company, or... I run. Behind me, I hear Eric telling the board, poor girl. Unstable, just like her father. Must run in the family. Outside, Mom's car is gone. Tommy's nowhere in sight. And I realize Eric's beaten me at my own game. He's not just taking the company, he's destroying everything I love. My phone buzzes, a photo message from an unknown number. Tommy's iPad lying broken in the park. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about making them destroy themselves. And Eric's just turned my own strategy against me. I find Tommy exactly where Mom used to take us after bad days, the old playground behind River Clean Solutions. He's sitting on a swing, iPad clutched to his chest, while Mom paces nearby, phone in hand. He said you'd come here, Mom says without turning. That you'd choose Tommy over the company. Like you chose Eric over us. She flinches. I didn't. I thought I was protecting us. Eric showed me proof that your father was embezzling. Fake proof. Just like that doctored security footage. I move toward Tommy, but Mom steps between us. Don't. Her voice breaks. Eric says if you take Tommy, he'll press charges against Dad. My phone buzzes, a text from Grandma, check your email. Now. The attachment is a video. Eric in his office, arguing with someone off-screen about shell companies, money transfers, and Linda Rivers' useful naivety. The timestamp is from this morning. Mom, watch this. More accusations. More attempts to poison me against. Against what? The man who burned down Grandma's house. Who threatened your 7-year-old son. Tommy's small voice cuts through our argument. He said he'd hurt Dad if Mom didn't help him. Mom goes still. What? I heard him on the phone. He said Mom was almost ready, but if she wasn't, he knew people who could make accidents happen. A car door slams in the parking lot. Eric strides toward us, his confidence cracking when he sees us all together. Linda, darling, what are you doing? The board's waiting. Watch the video, Mom. I hold out my phone. Watch it now. Eric lunges for the phone, but I'm faster. Mom catches a glimpse of the screen, Eric's own words damning him, before he knocks it away. It's fake, he snarls. Like everything else they've tried. The original's already with the police, I cut in. Along with proof of the shell companies you used to siphon money. Did you really think Grandma wouldn't have backup copies of everything? Linda. Eric's voice turns gentle. They're manipulating you. Remember what the therapist said about Michael's control tactics? The therapist you chose, Mom whispers. The one you insisted I see alone. His mask slips. Everything I did was for us. No. Mom's voice hardens. Everything you did was for you. Just like with the others. Sarah Mills. Jessica Carter. Eric's hand shoots out, grabbing Mom's arm. Don't be stupid. The crack of Mom's slap echoes across the playground. Eric staggers back, then straightens, all pretense gone. Fine. You want the truth. Your precious family business was dying long before I arrived. I just accelerated the inevitable. And now? He laughs. Now the board thinks your husband's abusive, your daughter's unstable, and your mother-in-law's senile. Who do you think they'll believe? Police sirens wail in the distance. Eric's smile falters. They'll believe the evidence, Dad's voice rings out. He steps from behind the playground equipment, phone recording everything. The real security footage. The financial records. Your confession just now. Eric runs. He makes it 3 steps before Officer Richardson, son of the family Eric tried to fire, tackles him to the ground. You recorded everything. Mom asks Dad. Peyton's idea. She said Eric would crack if he thought he'd won. Mom turns to me, tears streaming. I'm so sorry. I should have seen. Later, I say, because Tommy's running toward us and some wounds need time before they can heal. We watch the police lead Eric away, his threats and protests fading into the evening air. Mom's still shaking, Dad's keeping his distance, and nothing's really fixed yet. But Tommy's safe. The company's secure. And as I hold my little brother close, I realize revenge isn't always about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about protecting what matters most, even if it means breaking everything else to do it. Let's go home, I say, and for the first time in months, I actually believe we can. The boardroom feels different now. Maybe it's because Eric's nameplate is gone, or because Mom and Dad sit on opposite sides of the table, or because Tommy's drawings hang on the wall behind my chair. Small changes that mean everything. The Richardson contract is secure, I tell the board. With the original terms intact. Murmurs of approval ripple through the room. Dad nods slightly, he taught me well. Negotiate from strength, but remember the human cost. And the modernization plans? Someone asks. We're updating systems, not replacing people. I slide across proposals for actual improvements, not Eric's hollow schemes. River Clean Solutions was built on family loyalty. That's not changing. The vote is unanimous. As people file out, Mom lingers, twisting her wedding ring, a habit she never broke, even after taking it off. The police found more evidence in Eric's storage unit, she says quietly. Documents from other companies, other women. I know. The files sit in my office, a reminder of what happens when revenge becomes an addiction. He'll have plenty of time to think about his choices in prison. Like I'm thinking about mine. Her laugh is bitter. I let him poison everything. Your father, your graduation, Tommy's sense of safety. Mom. I touch her hand. We all made choices. She looks at me, really looks at me, for the first time since that night. When did you grow up so fast? Around the time I had to. Grandma appears in the doorway, her cane tapping against the floor. The contractors are here about the house repairs. Go, I tell Mom. Help Grandma rebuild. We'll figure out the rest later. After they leave, Dad approaches my chair, his old chair. Ready for your first solo board meeting? Terrified. I straighten papers that don't need straightening. What if I mess up? What if I turn into Eric? Dad shakes his head. Not possible. You know why? Because I have your moral compass and Grandma's cunning. Because you stopped. He sits on the edge of the desk. You had Eric cornered, the company in your control. You could have destroyed your mother's reputation like he tried to destroy mine. But you chose protection over punishment. I chose family. Exactly. Tommy bursts in, iPad displaying his latest game score. Can we get ice cream? Mom said to ask you, since you're the boss now. Chocolate chip. I ask, and his grin is answer enough. At the door, I pause, looking back at the boardroom. The family photos on the walls, 3 generations of River's determination. The empty chair where Eric once plotted destruction. The space between mom and dad that might never fully close. Some things break too completely to fix. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the cracks and missing pieces become part of the story, reminding us what we fought to protect. Coming, boss. Tommy calls. Don't call me boss. I ruffle his hair as I pass. I'm still just your sister. Yeah, but you're scarier now. Like Grandma. I laugh, because he's not entirely wrong. I learned about revenge from Eric, but I learned about power from Margaret Harris. The difference is knowing when to use it, and when to let it go. Outside, Mom and Dad walk on either side of Grandma, discussing paint colors for her rebuild study. They're not together, probably never will be again. But they're talking, and sometimes that's enough. Tommy grabs my hand, pulling me toward the ice cream shop. Behind us, River Clean Solutions stands solid and unchanged, despite everything that tried to tear it down. I squeeze my brother's hand, thinking about choices and consequences, about the fine line between justice and vengeance. About how sometimes protecting what matters means letting go of what's broken. And sometimes, it means choosing chocolate chip ice cream over corporate warfare. At least for today.
Success tastes like expensive champagne and validation. At least that's what I thought until my mother's name lit up my phone screen, shattering 5 years of carefully maintained silence. I stared at the notification, my finger hovering over the reject button. The bubbles in my glass had gone flat, much like my celebration mood. Around me, my colleagues from Horizon Solutions continued their animated chatter, toasting my promotion to department head. Jasmine, you have to see what marketing just posted about you. Tyler waved his phone, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from my screen. My mother, Linda, the woman who'd spent my entire childhood comparing me to my perfect sister Brittany. The phone kept vibrating, insistent as a wasp at a picnic. Tyler's smile faded when he noticed my expression. Everything okay? I excused myself and stepped onto the office balcony, where the city lights blurred beneath me. My hands shook as I accepted the call. Darling, Linda's voice dripped honey and arsenic. I saw your announcement on Instagram. Department head at 28. We're all so proud. We, as if she had any right to include herself in my achievements. How did you get this number? Oh, your Aunt Karen mentioned it. We've been following your career, you know. Your father and I always knew you'd do well. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that scared a nearby pigeon into flight. Really? Because I remember you telling me I'd never amount to anything without the family's connections. Water under the bridge, surely. She paused, and I could practically see her perfectly manicured nails drumming against whatever overpriced surface was nearest. We're having a family reunion next month. Everyone will be there. Brittany's flying in from Paris, and your grandmother Eleanor is coming too. My throat tightened at the mention of Gran. She was the only one who'd supported me when I'd cut ties with the family, the only one who understood why I had to leave. I'm busy, I said automatically. Busy avoiding your family? Darling, you're not that little girl anymore. You've proven yourself. Isn't it time to let go of old grievances? Old grievances, like the time she'd torn up my art school acceptance letter because it didn't fit the family image. Or when she'd given Brittany my college fund because she showed more promise. Why now? I demanded. Why reach out after 5 years? Because we're family, she said, as if that explained everything. And family should celebrate success together. Think about it. You could show everyone how far you've come. Brittany would love to hear about your work. I bet she would. My sister had always been fascinated by my failures, less so by my successes. I'll think about it, I said, knowing I wouldn't. Wonderful. I'll text you the details. And Jasmine? Her voice softened to that dangerous velvet tone I remembered from childhood. Do try to dress appropriately this time. You know how these gatherings can be. The call ended, but the tension remained, coiling in my stomach like a snake. Through the glass doors, I could see Tyler watching me with concern. He'd been there through the worst of my family drama, picking up the pieces when I'd finally broken free. My phone buzzed again, a text this time with an address and date. Below it, a photo appeared. My mother, father, and Brittany posed perfectly in their perfect living room, wearing perfect smiles that never quite reached their eyes. I should delete it. Block the number. Continue building my life without their toxic influence. Instead, I found myself saving the details, a plan already forming in my mind. They wanted to see how far I'd come? Fine. I'd show them exactly what their neglect had created. Someone who'd learned to fight back. My champagne sat abandoned on a nearby table, warm and flat. I picked it up anyway and drained it in one go. Sometimes revenge, like champagne, is best served cold. Gran's house always smelled like lavender and rebellion. I found her in her garden, pruning roses with the same precision she'd once used to cut toxic people from her life. The silver streaks in her hair caught the afternoon sun as she turned to face me. "I wondered when you'd show up," Eleanor said, setting down her shears. "Linda called." Of course she had. My mother's network of informants rivaled the CIA. Then you know about the reunion. I know it's a trap. Gran's eyes narrowed. What I don't know is why you're considering walking into it. I helped her gather the cut roses, their thorns pressing against my palms. Maybe I'm tired of running. You never ran, Jasmine. You escaped. She led me inside where 2 teacups already waited. Earl Grey, my favorite. There's a difference. The kitchen walls held photographs spanning decades, weddings, graduations, family gatherings. I noticed how the recent ones showed only half the family, split along battle lines drawn years ago. "Brittany's back from Paris," I said, watching Gran's reaction. Her lips tightened. "Yes, another failed fashion venture, I hear. Though your mother calls it a strategic career pivot." She poured the tea with steady hands. "Did you know she's been asking about your company?" My cup froze halfway to my lips. "What?" Madison overheard her at Karen's dinner party last week. Very interested in Horizon Solutions' client list. Gran's voice carried a warning. "Your sister always did prefer stealing success to earning it." A memory surfaced. Brittany, 16, wearing my award-winning art piece like a crown at the school exhibition, accepting praise while I watched from the shadows, mother beaming at her golden child. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "Your sister just requested to connect on LinkedIn. Heads up." "They're planning something," I said, showing Gran the message. "Of course they are." She reached across the table, her fingers closing over mine. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before I could answer, another text arrived. Brittany. "Sis, let's grab coffee tomorrow? So much to catch up on." XOXO. Gran read the message over my shoulder and snorted. "The last time she wanted to catch up, you lost that gallery opportunity." I remember. The rejection letter had arrived suspiciously soon after Brittany learned which gallery I'd applied to. "Pure coincidence," Mother had said, just like all the other coincidences that seemed to follow my sister's interest in my life. "You could say no," Gran suggested. "Keep your distance, stay safe." I stared at the roses we'd gathered, blood red and perfect. Or I could say yes and find out what they're really after. "Jasmine." Gran's voice carried decades of concern. "Some gardens are better left unpruned. And some weeds need to be pulled out by the roots." I typed a quick reply to Brittany, suggesting a trendy cafe downtown. Besides, I'm not that naive art student anymore. "No," Gran agreed, studying me with a mixture of pride and worry. "You're much more dangerous now." My phone lit up with Brittany's immediate response. "Perfect. Can't wait to hear all about your promotion. Mom says you're doing so well." I could almost taste the poison beneath the sweetness. 7 years ago, I would have believed her enthusiasm. 7 years ago, I still thought family meant protection, not predation. "Just promise me something," Gran said as I gathered my things to leave. Whatever you're planning, and don't tell me you're not planning something. Remember that revenge is like those roses. Beautiful, but the thorns cut both ways. I hugged her goodbye, breathing in that familiar lavender scent. I learned from the best, Gran. You taught me how to handle thorns. As I drove home, Brittany's text glowed on my passenger seat like a challenge. Tomorrow, I'd walk into that cafe armed with years of accumulated pain and a newly forged armor of success. Let them try their games. This time, I knew how to play. And I had something they didn't. Nothing left to lose. The cafe's security footage played on my laptop screen in grainy black and white. I'd watched it 7 times now, studying Brittany's movements during our casual catch-up. The way she'd positioned herself to face the door. How her phone remained carefully angled throughout our conversation. The precise moment she'd excused herself to powder her nose. Exactly 3 minutes before Tyler texted about the emergency board meeting. Madison's message blinked on my screen. Found something. Check your email. Don't open at work. I glanced around the empty conference room before clicking the link. Financial records, tax statements, property listings, all bearing the family name, all showing a pattern that made my stomach turn. Interesting reading? I slammed my laptop shut. Tyler stood in the doorway, his expression grim. The board meeting wasn't a coincidence, was it? 3 of our biggest clients received anonymous emails questioning our integrity. He dropped a folder on the table. All from different addresses, all mentioning you specifically. My hands shook as I read the emails. Each one referenced insider information that only someone with intimate knowledge of our operations would know. Information I'd mentioned during coffee with Brittany. They're trying to destroy everything I've built. The words tasted like acid. Tyler's hand found my shoulder. We traced the IP addresses, all from high-end hotels in Paris, where Brittany's been staying. I laughed, but it sounded more like breaking glass. Mother always said she had a talent for networking. My phone buzzed. Linda's number. I let it ring through to voicemail. Darling, I heard about the unfortunate situation at work. These things happen in business. Perhaps it's time to consider other opportunities? The family business could always use someone with your experience. The family business. The same one that, according to Madison's documents, was hemorrhaging money through a maze of shell companies and fraudulent investments. The same one that had mysteriously acquired several properties shortly after their original owners faced sudden financial ruin. They're not just trying to destroy me, I realized. They're trying to force me back under their control. Tyler studied the documents spread across the table. This goes deeper than family drama, Jasmine. This is corporate espionage. No. I stood up, pieces clicking into place. This is desperation. Look at these dates. I pointed to the property acquisitions. Each one corresponds to one of Brittany's successful ventures. They've been using the family business to launder money through her failed projects. My phone buzzed again. A text from Madison. Aunt Linda's asking questions about my access to company records. Be careful. The walls seemed to close in. Years of manipulation, of calculated cruelty, all leading to this moment. They'd let me build myself up just to tear me down, expecting me to crawl back, begging for help. We need to alert the authorities, Tyler suggested. Not yet. I gathered the documents, mind racing. They've covered their tracks too well. We need irrefutable proof. The reunion's in 2 weeks, he reminded me. They'll expect you to have broken by then. A plan formed, dark and dangerous as storm clouds. Then let's give them exactly what they expect. My phone lit up with another call. Brittany this time. I answered on speaker. Sis, I just heard about the board meeting. Are you okay? The concern in her voice was perfect, practiced. I thought of all the times she'd used that same tone while taking credit for my work, stealing my opportunities, destroying my chances. I don't know what to do, I whispered, letting my voice crack. Everything's falling apart. Oh, honey. The satisfaction beneath her sympathy was barely concealed. Come home. We'll figure this out together. Family first, right? Right. I agreed, catching Tyler's worried look. Family first. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began typing my resignation letter. Sometimes the only way to dismantle a trap is to step into it willingly. "Are you sure about this?" Tyler asked. I thought of Gran's roses, of thorns that cut both ways. They want to play happy families? Fine. Let's see how well their facade holds up when the prodigal daughter returns. The setting sun cast long shadows across the conference room, turning everything blood red. Somewhere across the city, my family was celebrating their apparent victory, unaware that every move they'd made had only strengthened my resolve. Let them think they'd won. The best revenge, after all, is served at a family dinner. The family estate loomed before me, its windows gleaming like predatory eyes in the afternoon sun. I hadn't planned to return here until the reunion, but Robert's unexpected call had changed everything. "Your mother's not home," he said, opening the door. 7 years had aged him 2 decades. "We need to talk." The foyer still displayed the same carefully curated family photos, Brittany's achievements, Mother's social triumphs. Not a single image of me remained. "Coffee?" Robert's hands trembled as he poured. "I saw your resignation letter. Linda was pleased." I'm sure she was. I watched him avoid my gaze. "Why did you call me here?" He placed a manila envelope on the kitchen counter, then stepped back as if it might explode. "I found these in Brittany's old room. You should see them." Inside were documents, contracts, emails, bank statements. My fingers went numb as I read. The family business hadn't just been laundering money. They'd been systematically destroying their competitors, including my former company. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to be complicit." Robert's voice cracked. "Your mother and sister, they're planning something for the reunion. Something big. I can't stop them, but I thought—" The front door clicked. Robert's face went white. "Daddy?" Brittany's voice rang through the house. "Your car's still here. Did you forget about our lunch?" She froze in the kitchen doorway. The perfect mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. "Jasmine, what a surprise." "I was just leaving." I moved to gather the documents, but Brittany was faster. "What's this?" She snatched the envelope, scanning its contents. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into the paper. "Daddy, you shouldn't share confidential business materials." "They're not confidential if they're evidence of fraud," I said. Brittany's laugh could have cut glass. "Evidence? These are just internal documents. Besides, who would believe you? The bitter older sister, jealous of her successful family." "Brittany, please," Robert started, but she silenced him with a look. "It's fine, Daddy. Jasmine's just confused. Aren't you, sis? All that stress from losing your job, it must be affecting your judgment." My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. "Gran's in the hospital. Heart attack. Get here now." The room tilted. Brittany read the distress on my face and smiled. "Problem?" "This isn't over." I managed, heading for the door. "It never is with you." Brittany's voice followed me. "Say hi to Gran for us. Such a shame about her fall." I spun around. "Fall?" The message said heart attack. "Did it? My mistake." She examined her nails. "Memory's been a bit fuzzy since I had lunch with her yesterday." The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Robert wouldn't meet my eyes. At the hospital, I found Tyler already there, pacing the waiting room. "She's stable," he said before I could ask. But Madison found something in her system. Traces of digitalis. Foxglove. My nails cut into my palms. Brittany's favorite flower. She always kept them in her garden. "There's more." Tyler lowered his voice. "The board meeting tomorrow. They're voting to acquire Horizon Solutions. Hostile takeover. Your mother's company will absorb everything." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. My resignation, the client sabotage, Gran's accident. They weren't just trying to bring me back to the family, they were systematically dismantling every escape route I had. "I can't prove any of it, can I?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "Not legally." Tyler hesitated. But Madison copied the documents before Brittany took them. We have enough to destroy their reputation, if not their freedom. Through the hospital window, I watched the sun set behind the city skyline. Somewhere out there, my sister was probably already reporting the stolen documents to the police. My father was likely drinking himself into familiar oblivion. And my mother. "When does the board vote?" I asked. 9 a.m. tomorrow. I thought of Gran lying in that hospital bed, of Robert's trembling hands, of all the years of calculated cruelty masked as family love. Then we have 12 hours to tear everything down. Jasmine. Tyler touched my arm. If we do this, there's no going back. I looked at my phone's wallpaper. The last photo taken of Gran and me together, both of us smiling, real smiles that reached our eyes. They crossed that line when they went after her. Now they'll learn what real family loyalty looks like. The night stretched ahead, dark with possibility and promise. Sometimes the only way to save what you love is to burn everything else to the ground. The hospital room's monitors beeped steadily as Gran slept. I'd spent the last 3 nights here, watching her vital signs while coordinating with Tyler and Madison. My laptop glowed with damning evidence. Forged signatures, fraudulent property transfers, offshore accounts. "You should rest," Tyler said, appearing with coffee. "The board meeting's in 6 hours." "Can't." I showed him the latest email from Linda, a family photo from the upcoming reunion's seating chart. They'd placed me next to Brittany, directly across from the kitchen doors. They're not even trying to be subtle anymore. My phone buzzed. Madison. "Found something in Aunt Linda's email. You need to see this now." The attached document made my blood freeze. A contract dated 3 days ago, selling Gran's house. Her signature looked perfect. Too perfect. The kind of perfect that came from years of practice forging art school rejection letters and withdrawal forms. "They're taking everything," I whispered. "Not just the company. They want to leave her with nothing." Tyler studied the contract. "We can stop this. The board members won't believe us without proof." I closed my laptop harder than necessary. "And Brittany has the original documents. Then we'll get them back." The determination in his voice made me look up. "Madison says your mother is hosting her weekly bridge club right now. The house will be empty except for the staff." The implications hung in the air like smoke. Breaking and entering, theft, criminal charges if we were caught. But Gran's monitors kept beeping, each sound a reminder of what they'd already done. "I can't ask you to risk." "You're not asking." Tyler grabbed his keys. "I'm telling." The drive to my childhood home felt surreal. Security cameras tracked our movement up the driveway, but Madison had already looped the footage. 3 minutes to get in, 5 to search, 2 to get out. "Remember," Tyler said as I picked the lock to Brittany's private office, a skill learned from years of retrieving stolen diaries and art supplies. "If anyone shows up?" "I know." The door clicked open. "Run." Brittany's office reeked of expensive perfume and artificial success. Awards lined the walls, half of them originally mine. The safe behind her favorite self-portrait yielded easily to our grandmother's birthday. "Found them," I said, pulling out the envelope Robert had shown me. But underneath lay something else. Medical records. Gran's medical records dated months before her accident. "Jasmine." Tyler's voice carried a warning. "Someone's coming." Footsteps echoed down the hall. I shoved everything into my bag, but as we turned to leave, Brittany's laptop caught my eye. Password protected, but I knew my sister. She'd always used the same one, the date she'd won her first art competition. With my painting. "We need to go," Tyler insisted. 1 minute. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Access granted. Files copied. Time running out. The footsteps grew closer. Tyler grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the window. We made it to the car just as voices filled the office above. My heart pounded as Tyler drove us away, the stolen documents burning a hole in my bag. Back at the hospital, Madison was waiting. "Mom's asking questions," she said. "She knows something's happening. I spread the documents across Gran's bedside table. Medical reports showing deliberate medication changes. Property transfers dated before the accidents. Emails discussing contingency plans if I didn't cooperate. They've been planning this for months, Madison whispered, horror creeping into her voice. The reunion, the company takeover, Gran's condition, it's all connected. Not for long. I pulled up Brittany's copied files. The board meeting starts in 2 hours. By then, every member will have copies of these documents. Anonymous source, of course. They'll come after you, Tyler warned. Your mother won't let this go. Good. I took Gran's hand, feeling her weak pulse against my fingers. Because I'm counting on it. The sunrise painted the hospital room in shades of red and gold. In a few hours, my family's carefully constructed empire would begin to crumble. They'd taught me well. About power, about manipulation, about revenge. Now it was time to show them exactly how well I'd learned those lessons. Madison, send the files. I watched the morning light creep across Gran's peaceful face. It's time to give them a family reunion they'll never forget. The family reunion buzzed with artificial cheer and expensive champagne. I watched from my assigned seat as Linda worked the room, her designer dress catching the light like scales on a snake. Brittany held court near the French doors, surrounded by admirers who had no idea she'd nearly killed our grandmother. You're looking well, Robert said, hovering by my chair. The board meeting's aftermath had aged him another decade. Your mother was worried you wouldn't come. Was she? I sipped my water, noting how Brittany's eyes kept darting to my plate. Or was she worried I would? Madison's text vibrated against my hip. USB drive planted in Linda's study, security footage looping. The catering staff emerged from the kitchen, carrying plates of Linda's famous seafood risotto. My special plate arrived last, garnished with fresh parsley, just like the dish that had sent me to the hospital at 16. Still allergic to shellfish? Brittany asked sweetly. Don't worry, I made sure they knew. I bet she did, just like she'd made sure about Gran's medication. Linda clinked her glass, commanding attention. Before we eat, I'd like to thank everyone for coming to celebrate our family's reunion. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Especially Jasmine, who's finally come home after her unfortunate professional setback. The room temperature seemed to drop. Several guests shifted uncomfortably, aware of the hostile takeover that had made headlines. Actually, I stood, my chair scraping against hardwood. I'd like to say something. Darling, Linda's warning tone could have frozen hell. Perhaps after dinner? No, now is perfect. I pulled out my phone, connecting to the house's wireless speakers, another of Madison's tricks. I've prepared a presentation. The first image appeared on the dining room's projection screen, Gran's medical records, then the forged documents, the offshore accounts, each slide accompanied by gasps and murmurs from the assembled guests. What is this? Linda's voice shook with barely controlled rage. The truth. I moved away from my plate as Brittany's hand twitched toward it. About the family business, about Gran's accident, about everything. You ungrateful. Brittany lunged forward, but Robert caught her arm. Security footage, too, I continued, watching color drain from Linda's face. Very thorough security system you have. Records everything. Even conversations about poison and property theft. The room erupted in chaos. Linda's society friends backed away, phones already spreading the scandal. Robert slumped in his chair while Brittany's perfect mask cracked completely. Then I felt it. The first hint of throat constriction. The familiar tingle on my tongue. They'd gotten to my water glass. Tyler moved toward me, but Linda blocked his path. Jasmine, you're clearly unwell. Perhaps you should lie down. My vision blurred. The EpiPen in my purse seemed miles away. Madison's horrified face swam at the edge of my consciousness. You see? Linda addressed the room, her voice dripping concern. The stress of losing her position has affected her judgment. These accusations are clearly recorded. Tyler's voice cut through my growing dizziness. He held up his phone, still filming. All of it. including whatever you just did to her drink. I stumbled, catching myself on the table. The room tilted dangerously. "Nobody leaves," Tyler commanded as guests tried to flee. "Police are already on their way." Through darkening vision, I saw Brittany's smirk fade. Linda's mask of concern cracked. Robert finally stood up straight. "Daddy," Brittany pleaded, "do something." But Robert walked past her, past Linda, to where I was fighting for breath. "The EpiPen," he said, reaching for my purse. "Where?" The world went sideways. Voices blurred together. Someone screamed. Maybe Madison. Maybe me. The last thing I saw was Linda's face, twisted with a hatred that had always been there, just better hidden. Then darkness took me, and I couldn't help wondering if this was what winning felt like. This cold, empty feeling as consciousness slipped away. If revenge was worth dying for. The answer whispered through my fading thoughts. Not dying. Surviving. Because that's what I'd always done. What they'd taught me to do without meaning to. Survive. Fight. Win. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The game wasn't over yet. Hospital fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as consciousness returned. Tyler's face swam into focus, then Madison's. Behind them, police officers interviewed shocked party guests, while crime scene technicians photographed my water glass. "She's awake," Madison called, and a doctor hurried over to check my vitals. "You're lucky," she said. "The EpiPen and quick response time saved your life." Through the emergency room's glass doors, I watched Linda being handcuffed, her designer dress clashing with steel bracelets. Brittany sat nearby, mascara streaking her perfect makeup as she spoke to detectives. "The video's gone viral," Tyler said, showing me his phone. The footage showed everything. My presentation, the poisoning attempt, Linda's mask finally slipping. "Your mother's society friends are already distancing themselves." "Where's Robert?" My voice was raw from intubation, giving his statement. Madison squeezed my hand. "He's telling them everything. About Gran, about the company, about years of covering up their schemes." A commotion erupted outside. Brittany had broken free from the officers, bursting into my room. "You ruined everything." Her face contorted with rage. "We were protecting you, you ungrateful—" "Protecting me?" The heart monitor's beeping accelerated. By poisoning me? By trying to kill Gran? She was going to tell everyone about Mother's past, about what really happened to... Brittany caught herself, but too late. To whom? The room went deadly quiet. "Your Aunt Catherine." Robert's voice came from the doorway. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, but somehow stronger. "Your mother's sister, the one you were told died in an accident 25 years ago." Linda appeared behind him, flanked by officers. "Robert, don't," but he continued, words spilling out like blood from an old wound. Catherine threatened to expose Linda's first marriage, her criminal record. There was an argument, pills in her drink. He met my eyes. Just like tonight. "Mother?" Brittany's voice shrank to a whisper. Linda's mask cracked completely. "I did what I had to do. For this family, for our reputation. Catherine was weak, just like me?" I finished. "Is that why you tried so hard to control me? Because I reminded you of her? You were supposed to be perfect." Linda lunged forward, officers barely restraining her. "Like Brittany, but you fought everything, every lesson, every opportunity. Just like Catherine, always questioning, always threatening to ruin everything I built. The difference is," I sat up straighter, ignoring the pain. "I survived, and I recorded everything you just said." Madison held up her phone, still recording. Linda's face went ash white. "You taught me well, Mother, about power, about manipulation, about family loyalty." I nodded to the officers. "About consequences." As they led Linda away, Brittany collapsed into a chair, her world visibly crumbling. "I didn't know," she whispered, "about Catherine, about any of it." But you knew about Gran, I said. About the company fraud. About trying to destroy me. Because you were leaving us. Her perfect mask finally shattered, revealing something broken underneath. Everyone leaves. Robert stepped forward, placing a hand on Brittany's shoulder. Not everyone, but we have to earn the right to keep people in our lives. He turned to me. Something I learned too late. The sun was rising outside my hospital window, painting the sky in shades of redemption. Madison showed me another message. Gran was awake, asking for me. Tyler hadn't left my side, his quiet strength a reminder that family isn't always about blood. What happens now? Brittany asked, small and lost without her role to play. I thought about revenge, about justice, about the fine line between healing and destroying. Now we learn who we are without her scripts to follow. The morning light stretched across the hospital room, touching each face. Madison's loyalty, Tyler's devotion, Robert's regret, Brittany's uncertainty. All of us forever changed by the truth we'd uncovered. Sometimes family isn't what you're born into, but what you build from the ashes of what burns down. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction, but reconstruction. Creating something stronger from the broken pieces. The police had more questions. The media wanted statements. The future loomed, uncertain but free. For the first time in my life, I was ready to face it all. Not as the person they'd tried to make me, but as the person I'd become despite them. Or perhaps because of them. Gran's garden bloomed with autumn roses as I helped her prune the dying branches. The morning paper lay folded on her patio table, its headlines still visible. Business empire crumbles. Linda Mitchell faces criminal charges. You haven't visited Brittany, Gran said, her pruning shears snipping with surgical precision. She made her choice. I gathered fallen petals, remembering my sister's face at the sentencing. She'd looked lost, stripped of her designer armor and practiced smiles. The rehab facility has a good program. And Robert? The roses felt velvet soft against my fingers. He's cooperating with the investigation. Trying to make amends, I suppose? Gran set down her shears, studying me with eyes that had seen through Linda's facade decades ago. There's something I need to show you. Inside, she unlocked a drawer I'd never noticed before, removing a leather-bound journal. Your Aunt Catherine's diary. I've kept it all these years, waiting for the right moment. My hands trembled as I opened it. Catherine's words flowed across the pages, describing Linda's early manipulations, her growing fears, her final desperate attempts to protect her family from her sister's poison. She knew, I whispered, about everything, about what Linda was capable of, just as I knew what you were capable of. Gran's voice held a mix of pride and sadness. Why do you think I encouraged your independence? Your art? Everything Linda tried to suppress? The diary's last entry was dated the day before Catherine's accident. Its final words struck like lightning. If anything happens to me, protect Jasmine. She has her father's heart and my spirit, too strong to break, too honest to corrupt. My phone buzzed. Tyler, checking if we were still on for dinner. Next to his message was a text from Madison about the graphic design business we were starting together, and another from Robert asking to meet. I always wondered, I said, closing the diary, why you didn't stop her sooner. Why you let Linda, for the same reason you orchestrated her downfall the way you did. Gran touched the diary gently. Some people have to expose themselves before others will believe the truth about them. Through the window, I watched a butterfly land on one of Gran's roses, its wings catching sunlight like stained glass. Catherine tried to fight her directly. That's why she lost. And you learned to fight smarter. Gran smiled. To build something stronger than Linda's walls of lies. Look at what you've created. Real friendships, honest success, true family. The doorbell rang. Madison arriving early with paint samples for our new office. Beyond her, I could see Tyler parking his car, carrying the takeout we'd promised Gran for dinner. I thought revenge would feel different, I admitted. More satisfying, maybe. Instead, it feels like freedom. Gran squeezed my hand. Catherine would be proud. Not of the revenge, but of what you've built from the ashes. The diary sat between us, its secrets finally laid bare. Outside, Madison and Tyler's laughter mingled with the garden's peace. My phone showed another missed call from Brittany, the third this week. Sometimes, Gran said, following my gaze to the phone, the hardest part isn't tearing down the old walls. It's deciding which new bridges to build. I thought of Brittany in rehab, fighting her own battles, of Robert's halting attempts at redemption, of Linda, facing the consequences of her choices in a cell that was, perhaps, no smaller than the prison she'd built for herself long ago. The butterfly took flight, rising above Gran's garden wall. Below it, new roses were already budding where we'd pruned the dead branches, reaching for light in their own way, at their own pace. I picked up my phone, Catherine's diary close at hand. Some calls shouldn't go unanswered forever. Some stories need new endings, even if they're harder to write than the ones we first imagined. After all, the strongest gardens grow in turned soil, and the deepest healing often begins when we least expect it, in the spaces between revenge and forgiveness, between justice and mercy, between the family we're born with and the one we choose to build.